But
they've closed all those down now, and if an ambulance goes down, there is carnage trying to get through to whoever they're needing to treat.
Or in King Street, if a bus tries to overtake a bus or anything else, you can't do it.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Very good afternoon to you. It's 3 p.m. Welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News with me, Ben Leo, just for this afternoon, broadcasting live from the heart of London and indeed all across the UK. France let hundreds cross the Channel this morning. That was hours before the big migrant deal is announced imminently. We'll hear live from Sir Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron later this hour. But will the deal be nothing but a French farce?
France and the United Kingdom have a shared responsibility to address irregular migration with humanity, solidarity and firmness.
Elsewhere, sickness handouts are soon to outpay minimum wage jobs by thousands of pounds a year. I can believe it. Is this proof work doesn't pay? Tory leader Kemi Badenoch says the system must change.
People are receiving disability benefits for having tennis elbow. I know some may disagree with me, but I do not believe that 1 in 4 of us can be considered disabled.
And the so-called Rolex Ripper is on the loose. The masked mugger allegedly stabbed a man to death in front of his partner outside a 5-star hotel in London last night. Is our capital safe anymore? And a display featuring a dinghy with dummies wearing life jackets condemned as sickening and racist is set to be burnt on a loyalist bonfire in Northern Ireland. Is it pride or poison? And trouble's brewing for our boozers. Get your last orders in, as Britain's is set to lose a pub a day as Labour's tax raid bites. Good afternoon. Thank you for your company. Ben Leo covering for Martin Daubney today, who I think, or suspect, or at least is enjoying the beautiful weather we've got. Let me know what you think about all of today's stories, particularly the press conference coming imminently between Sir Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron. Reports suggest we're going to be stitched up with 17 migrants in, with 1 migrant out. gbnews.com/your say. Let's get your news headlines with Sam Francis.
Ben, thank you, and good afternoon to you. Just after 3 o'clock, the top story. The level of cooperation with France has never been stronger, Downing Street says. Sir Keir Starmer is seeking to hammer out a migration deal with Emmanuel Macron. It's after the pair admitted a new deterrent was needed to stop small boats crossing the Channel. The Prime Minister hopes the French President will sign up to a one-in, one-out deal when they hold their Franco-British summit at number 10 today, the last of Mr Macron's state visit to the UK. Under that new deal, up to 50 migrants could be returned to France every week. But some are saying it doesn't go far enough. It comes as more than 44,000 migrants reached British shores illegally via small boats since last year's general election, including 20,600 so far this year.
This summit will signal a step change in our partnership to deliver greater prosperity and security for working people, building on our new agreement with the EU, which of course you referenced last night. In uncertain times, we achieve more by strengthening our relationship with our allies. So that is what today is all about, working together on the priorities that we share as two nations. For us, it's about delivering the changes that the British people want to see. We all agree the situation in the Channel cannot go on as it is. So we're bringing new tactics into play and a new level of intent to tackle illegal migration.
Kemi Badenoch has called for health benefits to be restricted to people with the most serious conditions as she set out her plans for welfare. In a speech earlier, the Tory leader warned of a ticking time bomb of welfare dependency as government forecasts suggest annual spending on health and disability benefits could reach £70 billion by 2030. Other projections suggest the figure could go as high as £100 billion. It's what she had to say a short while ago.
If we don't solve this problem, our economy will collapse. 1 million young people are currently not in education, employment or training. And we are on course to spend 1 in every £4 of income tax on sickness benefits alone. What began as a safety net for the most vulnerable has morphed into something completely different. The system is unsustainable, and this threatens all the good it was designed to do.
Health Secretary Wes Streeting has called for resident doctors to abandon their unreasonable rush to strike. It comes as new data shows the waiting list for routine hospital treatment in England has fallen for the second consecutive month to now its lowest in more than 2 years. But the number of patients facing the longest waits increased, according to NHS figures. Mr Streeting warns NHS recovery is fragile.
It's vital that the BMA does the right thing and pulls back from the strike action that they're threatening. It would lead to untold disruption to patients. It would lead to unfair pressures on other NHS staff, but it would also set back the NHS's recovery and all the progress that we're making together. So even at this late stage, I urge them to take them up, for them to take me up on my offer to meet with them to discuss how we rebuild the resident doctor profession at the same time as we rebuild the National Health Service.
The threat of physical attacks by Iran on people living here in the UK has increased significantly since 2022. That's according to a new report by Parliament's intelligence watchdog. Iran poses a wide-ranging, persistent and unpredictable threat to the UK, according to the Intelligence and Security Committee. It also said Iran's intelligence services were willing and able, often through third-party agents, to attempt assassination within the UK and kidnap from the UK. That report said there have been 15 murder or kidnap attempts against British citizens or UK-based individuals since the beginning of 2022. And 3 teenagers and a 20-year-old woman have been arrested as part of an investigation into cyber attacks targeting M&S, Co-op and Harrods. The National Crime Agency said the individuals were arrested early this morning on suspicion of blackmail, money laundering, offences linked to the Computer Misuse Act and participating in the activities of an organised crime group. The arrests included a 17-year-old British man from the West Midlands, a 19-year-old Latvian man from the West Midlands, a 19-year-old British man from London and a 20-year-old British woman from Staffordshire. That's the news on GB News. More in half an hour. Now, though, let's get over to Ben.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
And here's how the markets are shaping up for you this afternoon. The pound will buy you $1.3589 and €1.1593. The price of gold, £2,447 and 47 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 8,970 points.
My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Thank you, Sam, and good evening to you, good afternoon to you, rather, at home on GB News. Ben Leo covering for Martin Daubney just for today. Hundreds of migrants have crossed the Channel this morning, dwarfing the number that could be sent back to France under Sir Keir Starmer's new deal with Emmanuel Macron. Under these plans, up to 50 migrants could be returned to France just weekly. But more than 44,000 migrants, of course, have reached British shores via small boats since the 2024 general election a year ago, including 20,600 so far this calendar year. I mean, the numbers are unfathomable. Have we been taken for fools? Reform UK leader Nigel Farage certainly seems to think so.
This is a classic day in the English Channel over the last 5 years when the weather's calm, or a red day as they call it. And yes, you've got a migrant boat, and we've seen it through the binoculars. There's about 70 people on board being escorted all the way over by the French Navy, and behind us we have Border Force sitting on waiting for the handover, and we've paid £800 million to the French, and this is the farce that goes on.
Deary me. Well, joining me now is the former political editor of The Sun, Trevor Kavanagh. Trevor, good afternoon. Thank you for your company. Sorry it's under these circumstances, actually, because looking at those pictures from the Channel there with Nigel Farage, Mark White, hearing the potential detail that's been leaked about this Starmer-Macron briefing, which will come imminently on this show, it's all a bit depressing, isn't it?
Well, it's very depressing, actually. I mean, this is the so-called coalition of the willing, but in fact it's the coalition of the clueless and the credulous. I think that Macron has no idea what to do about the migrants, but he's very happy to see them paddling off to British shores. And Starmer simply doesn't care, really. I mean, deep down, the idea that he would smash the gangs was always a joke. He had never had any intention of seriously tackling this problem. And we have 4 more years of this at the rate of, what is it now, 80,000 so far. And that's going to balloon over the coming years. Nothing that they're talking about today and what they're about to announce will have any impact on that number, that invasion of people who are illegal. And that's the important thing to remember. They're illegal the moment they set foot on these shores.
Well, they are. So they are. I mean, Donald Trump, President Trump and his administration in the US dealt with this quite well at the start of their term. They said these people are, by definition, illegal. They're in the country illegally. But, Trevor, the Downing Street spokesman released a statement this afternoon calling them irregular migrants. So when the government of the day hasn't even got the balls, the guts, or let's say the competence to describe these people properly, what hope do we have of solving the problem?
Well, we have no hope at the moment. We will have no hope while this government's in office. And it is the policy and practice of the left always to rename anything that's unpopular so that it seems like a different problem, and they change the ground rules so that the counting is impossible. I think, actually, it's a calculated attempt to change the face of Britain. And I was 20 years ago when I was political editor, and I was talking to Tony Blair when he opened the floodgates to immigrants from Europe. I asked him if he was aware of the changing face of Britain, and he basically described me as a fascist.
Yeah.
But I've been
right. Trevor, they still would today. If you're suggesting it's intentional, and I can see why you'd say that. I mean, when you see the levels of incompetence, you've got... I just said to you off air, when you have strange men, thousands of them, from faraway lands, nobody knows who they are, where they're from, getting hold of dinghies from the French equivalent of Tesco, coming across the English Channel, and not only that, but the land of milk and honey that awaits them, the freebies, the bus passes into town, the spending money from the Home Office, the dentistry, the NHS, the Wi-Fi, so on and so on. We see it all over social media. They boast about it. They almost troll Brits and Britain with the fact they're here. When you see all that together, it's hard not to think that it's just beyond something to do with competence, isn't it?
Well, I think it's very easy to believe it's something beyond incompetence. I mean, we date back to that comment by one of the Labour Party researchers who said that this was to rub the nose of the Tory right in the issue of migration. And that is exactly what's been happening ever since. This is a calculated attempt to divide the country in many, many ways, not just on immigration, but on various other grievances.
So who's behind it then?
I hesitate to say that it's any single entity, but it is the sort of left, the divisive left, who use issues like trans and sexuality and colour and race, religion in terms of Islam, as a way of dividing the broad mass of common sense citizens from those with something to gain from that division.
Of course, if Sir Keir Starmer was here, if somebody from the government was here, they'd say, of course, this isn't intentional. They'd probably call you a conspiracy theorist, and me, and probably some viewers at home who go along with that concern. They've said tonight in a statement, the leaders agreed tackling, Macron and Starmer, they've agreed that tackling the threat of irregular migration and small boats is a top priority for this government. But the devil's in the detail with this deal, isn't it? It's coming imminently, this press conference. Apparently, Trevor, we will only be able to return 50 migrants a week, which is 800 for the year. Bearing in mind, you probably get 800 to 1,200 a week anyway, so it seems rather pointless.
Well, I think the broad mass of your viewers will have the sense to see that this is nonsense. It's a confidence trick. It's basically a slap in the face for the British public, who are not given a say in the way that their country is being governed for the next 4 years and has been for the last 12 months. And it will get a lot worse. And, Nigel Farage made a lot of very good comments then on when he was talking from that boat in the Channel, watching these people coming across in very large numbers. It's costing us 800 million a year, or 800 million to the French. It's costing $1 billion a year in housing for migrants in hostels. It's costing a huge amount of money in welfare for unemployed migrants once they're here. And it is dwarfing the issues. It is the single issue, and it's not going to be solved either by this government or indeed by its successive government.
Yeah, and it affects everything, every branch and aspect of this country, from schooling to housing to societal cohesion. You know, it goes on and on. And actually, Trevor, I suggest this state visit from Macron is totally unwarranted. And actually, I think it's an insult. I tweeted something similar the other day. I said that I believe France is a hostile state. When you've got a nation who's allowing this to happen, they can stop it. Of course they can. They can stop it with the click of a finger overnight. When you've got a country who's responsible for the destruction of British society and the pillaging of British taxpayers in the way that we are being pillaged to accommodate strange men, as I've described them, from faraway lands, I think they are a hostile state. And the fact that this guy's been given a state visit, I think, is outrageous.
Yes, I think that Macron is having a laugh at our expense, and he is sinister. And I think that actually the people who are coming across the channel are unknown. We don't know their provenance, but we do know that they are unlikely to meld into the British society. These are men of, as Farage has said again, and many others, young men of fighting age.
Yeah.
And it's very worrying that they are sliding into the community, often as faceless immigrants, wearing face masks in their illegal jobs as Deliveroo and Eat drivers. And I think that's a big problem that's going to haunt us for years to come.
All right, Trevor, thank you so much. I would love you back on my show on the weekends if you're around, so we'll stay in touch. Trevor Kavanagh, former political editor at The Sun, thank you. Now, beyond the politics, of course, Sir Keir Starmer does, for some reason, seem pretty pally with President Macron.
You, Mr. Prime Minister, dear Keir, my friend. Thank you for your words, Mr. Prime Minister, dear Keir. Mr. Prime Minister, you expressed how much important are our links.
I mean, yeah, they are pretty pally, aren't they? Why? Why are they so fond of each other? I mean, all I see is two world leaders, or apparent world leaders, doing very, very little to protect the interests of this country. Well, let's bring in former Director General of Border Force, Tony Smith, who believes Labour's migrant deal is worse than useless. Tony, good afternoon. Thank you for your company. We're going to get the full details imminently when this press conference starts, perhaps in maybe 40 minutes. It'll be live on this show, so stay tuned for that. What are you expecting? Because rhetoric, rumours suggest it will be something akin to 17 into Britain, one small boat migrant out.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing, Ben. That's what's been briefed out so far. As you know, these deals are already done in Downing Street right now. They're just figuring out what to say to the media and how to spin this to maximise their chances of both getting political advantage from it. But from the man in the street, the GB News listener, I think you hit it the nail on the head at the top of the show when you said it's really actually 1 for 17, isn't it? And actually, if you count the one, it's 1 for 18, because, 50 a week is not really going to be enough to deter others in Calais, I think, Ben, from coming across here. As you know, the Border Force on a busy day can get 1,000 coming ashore. In a week, it's possible to get many more than that, maybe 3,000 a week. And so it's a very, very small number that will actually be detained in the first place. I'm not sure how the returns process is actually going to work. And I'm not sure who these ones are, Ben, that we're bringing in, because there's already a family reunification visa available for refugees here. So I presume we're also opening up the door to people that the door is closed to at the moment. So it kind of feels to me like, that I was saying bad deal and no deal. Probably a no deal might be a bad deal, I think.
And also, Tony, I'm keen to find out, if and when it's talked about at this press conference, what will happen to the very few number of migrants who are sent back to France. So we know they're illegal migrants. They've probably come from, North Africa, for example. What's going to happen to them? Are they going to be detained or just dumped back in Calais ready for another crack at making it to Britain?
Well, if I had my way, Ben, the border force boat that you can see there would turn around straight, go to Calais and drop them off there. But that's not going to happen. They're going to be brought ashore to Western Jetfoil and Manston with everybody else. There'll be a triage there where the 50, it'll be eeny, meeny, miny, mo. For the 50, which will go into detention, the rest will go straight through into the hotels or the communities like they do now. Then we'll start a removals process. They'll be served with a letter, not unlike the Rwanda letter, which says you can't come in here. You're going back to a safe country. The lawyers will probably be all over it as well, Ben. They were in the Rwanda plan, I know that. But if you are able to get to a removals point, my guess is they'll be flown back out of Heathrow or somewhere into Paris-Charles de Gaulle. What will the French do with them? Well, you'll have a notice saying this person's been excluded from the UK. They'll probably grant them temporary admission back into the French community, and then they'll be able to head back up to Calais and have another go. I mean, we'll have their fingerprint.
You know they will, Tony. You know they will. They'll be on. They'll be on a train back to Calais, won't they? And have another crack at getting to Britain, and they'll probably make it over. I mean, the whole thing is so laughable. Let me ask you, Tony, as the former Director General of Border Force, Nigel Farage commented a bit earlier about the fact that Border Force acts, in his words, as a taxi service and escorts them from the 12-mile line back to Britain. Why do they do that? They are obviously taking orders from above from the government, but do you think the personnel of Border Force are happy with what they're doing? Or former colleagues?
I know they're not. We had a reunion yesterday. I talk to them all the time. They're not allowed to talk to you or Nigel or anyone else.
What did they tell you?
They're not happy. They didn't join the Border Force to become a taxi service to bring people ashore from the English Channel. The problem the Border Force has is they cannot put the Home Secretary in contempt of court. We have to act within the legal guidelines provided in our operational instructions. And our operational instructions demand that someone's in the 12-mile zone, we must rescue them, Ben. We must make sure they're safe and well, do everything we can under the law to stop them from joining and bring them ashore to make sure they're safe and well. Those are the operational instructions to the Border Force. The Border Force don't write those. Those come from policy and ministers, and if there were an operational order that said the Border Force, when you get these people on your border, then drive them back to Calais. There's a berthing spot at berth number 17 at Calais, offload them all there, and they'd be more than happy to do that, Ben, more than happy to do that, but they can't. And I'm really fed up with people having to go at the Border Force when actually it's not their fault. They are only implementing the laws and the hands that are dealt to them.
Yeah. OK, all right, well, I hope some of our viewers will take that on board, because I guess they are on the front line, and it's, I mean, me included, it's easy to have a crack at Border, even RNLI, and because they're the guys on the front line looking these people up. Maybe there's an argument that perhaps if they felt so strongly about it, they should strike, or I don't know, but, you know, it's difficult. People have jobs, they have livelihoods and so on. Tony Smith, former Director General of Border Force, thank you very much. Hopefully we catch up again soon. Right, let's speak now to Peter Edwards, former editor at Labour List. Peter Edwards, how are you going to try and spin this imminent announcement? Rumours that it will be 17 in, 1 out. If it's anything, I mean, even if it's half of that, Peter, it doesn't sound like a very good deal for Brits or Britain.
Well, it's not my job to spin anything, and I'm sure you wouldn't accept it, even if I tried to. But amidst all the criticism, and I thought some of your and Trevor's language about France was totally overblown. Amidst all the criticism,
Peter?
Was this question about France being a foe? I thought that was very daft, considering even though after Brexit...
I think they're a hostile state, Peter.
One of our nearest neighbours. No, Iran's a hostile state. We may have disagreements with France, but we have disagreements with our friends and family, and we have to get over them.
Isn't it funny, Peter? You mentioned... Sorry to interject. You mentioned that France are our closest neighbours. I mean, I try and get on with my neighbours as much as possible because it makes sense to have societal cohesion. You know, if you go on holiday and your bathroom's leaking, you'd like a neighbour to pop in and sort it out. When you have a nation such as France, who I will say Britain has helped out many, many a time over the decades and the centuries, probably without much back, you've got a nation such as France allowing this to happen en masse. 44,000 people this year, not just people, young, strange men, I keep saying, from faraway lands. They are doing nothing about it. So forgive me for calling them a hostile nation in my eyes.
What's your question, Ben? I mean... That's just a speech, you know. France didn't create this problem. We all agree.
It's not just speech. Horrific. These men are arriving on our shores. It's not just speech.
No, hold on. Well, you could interview yourself, but that may not have quite the right balance. You know, France didn't create this problem. You can debate with France whether they've handled it well, whether they've been value for money in terms of the British taxpayer money that's gone over there. But France didn't create this problem. It's sadly, it's a product of global conflict, different laws in different countries, and there are pull factors that come to Britain. and we know that. But I can't see any solution to this problem that involves having a bust-up with France. And on the numbers, this is a pilot scheme. Your viewers are intelligent enough to know what a pilot scheme means. That means you try a small number and then roll it out more widely if it works. A pilot scheme is better than zilch, which is what we had before, and the Rwanda scheme that existed only on paper and not in reality.
I'd argue even a pilot scheme which has 17 in and 1 out is just totally pointless. As I said, even if you half the number...
What's your alternative?
Half the number is pointless.
Do you have an alternative?
An alternative?
Do you have an alternative? Yeah.
Well, I'd turn them back. I'd look at Australia and speak to maybe the likes of, Prime Minister Tony Abbott and so on and get some advice from them. You turn them back. And you have to... I know you want to be friends with France for some bizarre reason, despite their reluctance to help this country, but you have to stick it to France and say, we don't care. Peter Edwards, thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Former editor at Labour List. Right, let us know what you think about that. gbnews.com/your say. Still to come, life-size migrant dummies have been placed on loyalist bonfires in Northern Ireland. Is it a step too far? This is Ben Leo covering for Martin Daubney on GB News. Back in a sec.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/your say. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back to Martin Daubney with me, Ben Leo, just for this afternoon. Now, a row's broken out over plans to burn an effigy of migrants in a small boat. Here's the pictures if you're watching on telly. It forms part of a bonfire in Northern Ireland, which is set to be burnt as part of annual July the 12th celebrations by loyalists. Well, joining me now is our man on the ground, GB News reporter Doogie Beattie, of course. Doogie, good afternoon. This is causing quite a stir, isn't it? What's going on?
Well, it is causing quite a stir, and for all the wrong reasons. But on the other hand, there's some right reasons as far as the makers of that bonfire are concerned. You've got to understand that Moy Gashel is probably about 10 miles from Portadown, where I witnessed some of the worst rioting I have seen in many a year just 2 weeks ago, and that was over illegal immigration and what had happened in Ballymena 3 nights before that. So there is a real feeling in the community that they're not being listened to. Now, there's about 300 of these bonfires across Northern Ireland, starting the July 12th celebrations, the Glorious Revolution, which is celebrated here. And this particular group, Moygashel, always use their bonfire to bring the media to it, to express something that is shocking, shall we say. So 2 years ago, they had an actual boat on top of it to protest about the Irish Sea border, the framework document. Last year, they had a effigy of a police Land Rover up on top of it. And this year, they have, well, they've got migrants in a boat on top of it. But underneath it, it actually says, veterans first before refugees. And that message is now getting out across the world. It is wrong, but on a PR scale, they have played it right as far as they're concerned, and that conversation is now going on because, of course, the Victims' Legacy Bill is going to be discussed in Parliament this Monday.
OK, Dougie, thank you very much for that. Appreciate it. Let's speak to former Labour spokesperson James Mathewson now. James, what do you make of this effigy set to be burned in a couple of days?
Well, it's disgusting, isn't it, Ben? It's racist.
Sorry, I couldn't quite hear you. Say it again.
It's disgusting, Ben, and it's racist, isn't it?
Are you asking me? I don't think it's particularly racist, no.
Would you think it's racist to put brown dummies on top of a bonfire?
What does it matter what does it matter what colour their skin is? It's a symbolic bonfire opposing illegal migration. Why are you talking about skin colour?
Because they're brown dummies. Why did they choose brown dummies, Ben?
Well, why would they? Again, what does it matter what their skin colour is? It's about migration.
Ben, why did they choose brown dummies?
No idea. Ask them, James. Ask them. Anyway, so you had the same problem with Donald Trump being burned, did you? And Nigel Farage at the Lewis bonfire, James, I suspect.
My God, Ben, you are doing the mental gymnastics today, aren't you?
Answer the question, James. You had the same concern when Donald Trump, Nigel Farage, Liz Truss were being burned at Lewis bonfire, did you?
I don't think any effigy should be burnt anywhere.
Oh, OK. Yeah. Well, OK, convenient.
But I mean, especially in this case, in the context of what we're seeing in Northern Ireland. I mean, let's be clear here, and the UK government has a real responsibility to step up here. They're prescribing Palestinian Action as a terrorist organisation, and yet you've got groups like Britain First running riot and saying, and spurring on these things, trying to drive these divisions. In the Republic, in the south of Ireland, you've got Conor McGregor and the likes of that, stirring up ridiculous tensions, dividing communities and causing people's houses, Ben, people's houses to be firebombed.
Well, do you know what happens, James? Do you know what happens, James? Generally, I think we've seen it over time in history. When a government fails to protect its borders and protect its people, it leads to extremism. When you have extremist...
Ben, that sounds
Hang on, let me finish.
Like...
Let me finish, please. When you have extremist policies such as allowing 44,000 illegal migrants across the Channel in a year, most of them fighting-age men, we don't know who they are, where they're from, I keep saying. When you allow that kind of extremist policy to happen and the extreme way in which a country's national identity is changing, and you leave people fearful, and you leave young women and young girls at risk of increased sexual attack, and so on and so on. We can go on forever. When that happens, that tends to lead to extremist behaviour.
No, it doesn't, Ben. I'm sorry, it's funny, isn't it? Because 9 times out of 10, when we talk about issues of personal responsibility and independence, right, you take the side of, people's personal responsibility and their choice, and it's down to individuals how they act. Yeah, when it comes to something like this, like burning brown dummies on a bonfire, which is so evidently, to me, to my family, to friends, to everybody I've spoken to in the past couple of days,
well, James, you keep talking about the colour of their skin.
Ben, let me finish. Yet you can't bring yourself to say it's racist. You would rather go through hoops to justify what's happening and say that it's the fault of, migration and blame it back on immigration, when actually
I think the bonfire is perfectly fine.
I'm not out there
referring to extremism. I don't think this bonfire is extremist. I think when you were talking about firebombing homes and so on, that's extremist. That's what I was referring to. I don't have a problem with this bonfire.
How do you not think it's extremist to burn effigies of migrants?
Well, the same way I didn't think it was extreme to burn effigies of Donald Trump or Liz Truss or Nigel Farage. That's people's prerogative.
Yes, it is.
OK, well, we disagree then. So there's nothing beyond that. There's no deeper than that. You think it's racist, I don't.
Ben, you need to switch off Twitter, you need to leave the GB News studio, and you need to go and touch grass, and you need to speak to real people and find out that they will find this.
James.
The majority of people in Ireland...
I think you, my friend, need to get yourself down to Dover today. It's a nice day. You probably get yourself an ice cream. Count the number of strange men coming into the country, 300-400 today, and count the number who have come over the past year, 44,000. People are worried, people are concerned for their safety, and they're worried about the change of direction of the identity of this country. Thank you, James. Appreciate your company. Have a good rest of the day. That's James Mathewson, former Labour Party spokesperson. Right, let us know what you think. GBNews.com/your say. Peter Lynch, you've said it's not racism, it's a reflection of all those crossing. Barbara, you've said it's not the illegals who hate us, it's Macron and Starmer. And James, you've said, so James doesn't seem concerned about young Irish girls at risk of getting attacked by migrants. There we go. Lots more to come between now and 4 o'clock, including a bad news day for pubs, unfortunately, as one a day is set to close this year. Is it the end of British culture? But first, let's get your latest news headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon. 3:30, the top story. More than 200 migrants have arrived in Dover so far today. And Sir Keir Starmer and the French president are pushing ahead with a new deal to tackle channel crossings. The so-called one-in, one-out plan aims to exchange asylum seekers between the two countries, though experts warn it faces major hurdles.
This summit will signal a step change in our partnership to deliver greater prosperity and security for working people.
Kemi Badenoch is calling for stricter welfare policies and says the system is being exploited. She says foreign nationals should be banned from claiming disability benefits. Labour, though, has hit back, accusing the Tories of failing to fix a broken system. Iran's unpredictable threats to the UK are rising, according to Parliament's Intelligence Committee. The report claims Iran poses a persistent and unpredictable threat to UK nationals. It also warns the government is not doing enough to counter Iran's activities. 4 people have been arrested in connection with cyber attacks that crippled M&S and the Co-op. The National Crime Agency says the suspects, aged 17 to 20, are accused of hacking and blackmail. And temperatures are set to soar above 34 degrees across the UK, triggering a heat health alert for every region. With the hottest weather expected through the weekend, experts are urging caution, especially for vulnerable groups. Those are the headlines for now. More news at 5.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Yes, it's time for your afternoon weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Tomorrow, similar to today. If anything, a little bit hotter. Many places will be sunny, a bit misty around some coasts. Now, it's not been sunny everywhere today. Still quite a lot of cloud across the far north of Scotland. A little bit of showery rain here in places too. But it is tending to drift away to the north, staying a bit damp in Shetland perhaps. But most places becoming dry through the night. In and around the Irish Sea, around the coast here, could be a bit misty and murky. Some sea fog lapping on shore at times, but most places dry and clear through the night. Pretty warm night in the south, in particular in towns and cities. Temperatures holding up in the high teens. A grey start then for parts of southwest Scotland, the east coast of Northern Ireland. Still perhaps quite a bit of cloud early on across the Northern Isles and the Western Isles, but generally here it's going to be a brighter day tomorrow than today. Nothing too bright early on the east coast of Northern Ireland, the southwestern areas of Scotland, the Isle of Man, around the coast of North and West Wales. It might just be a little misty and murky, as it could be on parts of the east coast as well. But certainly any mist and low cloud inland will tend to melt away pretty sharply, and I'm hopeful that any of that mist and sea fog around the coast will also tend to shrink away to reveal generally sunny skies for most this Friday. Temperatures are going to be picking up more widely over 30 degrees Celsius through the afternoon. Parts of the Midlands, East Wales in particular. Coasts will always be a bit cooler, but warmer for Scotland and Northern Ireland, and certainly across the Highlands. Temperatures rising compared to today's values. Friday evening, a balmy summer's evening for most, and then a similar day on Saturday. A bit more in the way of mist and low cloud perhaps on some of these eastern coasts, but again tending to move away and melt away through the course of the day. So many places just fine and dry and sunny with light winds, and Saturday probably seeing the peak of the heat, maybe close to 30 Celsius in northern Scotland, 32 or 33 further south. Goodbye.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBnews.com. Current incidents affecting your travel include roadworks on the M4 westbound at junction 23A Mega, with diversions in place. In Staffordshire, expect a 10-minute delay on the A50 eastbound between the A522 and the A518 due to congestion. A collision on the M1 northbound between junction 24 and junction 25 in Leicestershire has resulted in 3 out of 4 lanes being closed, causing delays of 30 minutes. And on the trains, cross-country and Great Northern services are experiencing major disruptions at Cambridge. Stay patient and informed by checking your routes in advance. And for more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Hello, welcome back to Martin Daubney with me, Ben Leo, just for this afternoon. Now, here's a question for you. Are British pubs in peril? Because more than one a day is set to close all across the country this year, and nearly 5,600 jobs will be lost as a result. The British Beer and Pub Association are now urging the government to reform business rates for the sector in a bid to keep doors open. Well, joining me now is the campaign director for the campaign for pubs, Greg Mulholland. Greg, good afternoon. Sorry, it sounds like I've had a couple of bevies myself already. It's not just business rates, is it?
As long as it was in a pub, Ben.
It's not just business rates, is it? It's electricity bills, it's the fact that supermarkets are selling such cheap alcohol. It's lots of things going on here, isn't it? Just explain to us, please. Paint the picture as to why so many pubs are closing.
Yeah, it's a combination of things, as you rightly say. It has to be said that last October's budget was disastrous. The current government, as all governments do, say, they value pubs. And yet changes were introduced by the Chancellor last year that heaped literally thousands of pounds of extra costs, even on medium-sized pubs, never mind larger pubs, and then you get into pub chains. The reality is that those huge hikes, particularly in national insurance costs, have made what were perfectly profitable pubs really, really struggle, so that the publican isn't making a living. There are other issues, as you rightly say. One of them, of course, is that some of the large companies, ironically represented by the BBPA, operate the tie, and they charge their own tenants, their own supposed business partners, 80-90% more for beer, wine, spirits, and that itself puts the prices up. So, we absolutely support the calls for business rates reform. We've been saying that for years. Pubs do pay more than is fair and reasonable because of the system of valuation. But we also need to see reform so that publicans are not forced to pay rip-off prices from pub companies. Because, I'm here on GB News. We have 6 large pub companies, all coming under the pubs code. 5 of them are offshore. 5 of them are not British companies anymore. So a huge chunk of that money, ironically, isn't staying in the UK economy at all. It's going abroad. So we need reform of the sector. We need more competition, more access for small brewers. But we also then need planning reform. We need planning protection, because at the moment it's far too easy for a cynical owner or a developer to close a pub and then put in for planning permission. Often what they'll do is they'll sit on it, let it rot. You've probably got pubs near you, I'm sure viewers will, all over the country, where people cynically exploit the planning system and sit there and ultimately get the permission. Now, those pubs weren't failing pubs in many, many cases. They were simply seen as a development opportunity, so that absolutely needs dealing with. So there are things that the government can do. At the moment, it doesn't seem to be understanding these things. but we will continue to urge them to do those right things, including business rate reform, planning reform, and reform of the BSI.
Such a shame, isn't it? Because I personal story, met my wife 16 years ago in our local pub. We were 17, 18 or whatever the age we were, and some years ago, maybe 3 years ago, the council snapped up the building. It was still a pub for vast, it was over market value, and then just either they sold it to a developer or developed it themselves. It's now just a block of flats, which is a crying shame. And it just feels like, Greg, kind of the erosion of British identity, just another aspect of it. We're slowly losing our pubs. Lots of people want to get rid of the royal family, so on and so on. Do you go by along with that thesis?
Well, it certainly is absolutely undermining a key part of the cultural identity of this country. You know, pubs reflect the communities they're in. They're slightly different in all regions, in all areas. City pubs, town pubs, suburban pubs, village pubs, they all have a character. But they are all part of this amazing pub culture where people, any age, any class can go in and meet people, whether they're strangers visiting an area or whether they're locals. Whether they're retired, whether they're working, whether they've just turned 18, that is a wonderful thing. And we need governments and decision makers, and we need councils to understand this more. Absolutely outrageous to hear an example of a council itself closing a pub and acting as a developer.
Oh, yeah.
I was involved in a similar case in Winchester. That should not be allowed. I think that's an abuse. But we do need changes to the planning system. So it's clear. I mean, every pub that is viable and wants someone to buy it and run it as a pub should be allowed to stay as a pub. That's as simple as that. And that principle should actually be in legislation, in planning law.
Yeah. Well said, Greg. And I guess you'd give a rallying cry to the great British public. You know, if you can, try and avoid the Tesco's and the Sainsbury's and get yourself down the pub maybe for a meal if you can get out and about.
Absolutely. You know, please get out and support your pub, support your communities, because you're supporting a community asset as well as supporting the publican. So absolutely get out, support your pub as often as you can, and also join the campaign for pubs and help us campaign for a more sustainable future.
Greg, thank you very much. Greg Mulholland, you are the campaign director for the Campaign for Pubs. Thank you, mate. Appreciate it. Right, let's move on. If you're in search of some holiday sun, here's the forecast for some top European destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Storm Gabriel is set to affect many areas of Central Europe, and to the east of this, the intense heat wave continues, triggering some thunderstorms at times. But across many areas of Western Europe, largely settled. Some showers at times, but it is going to be feeling warm in the sunshine. The main shower risk is as we move our way eastwards, particularly along the Adriatic coastline and then also parts of Greece. So once again, we could see some intense thunderstorms, but for many areas, plenty of sunshine and plenty of warm temperatures too.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain's Newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
Poll, it doesn't surprise either Bev or I, shows that most Brits believe that Britain is in decline. 76% of us, though, did surprise me, fear political unrest and even violence.
And those fears come amid violent riots, of course, in Ballymena in Northern Ireland. They've left dozens of police officers injured and the area largely destroyed in some cases, particularly the local leisure centre.
Let's talk to our Northern Ireland reporter, Doogie Beattie. Doogie, this report comes on the back of sustained riots over, 6 days in the province?
They are putting undocumented immigrants into areas of high deprivation. There is a group here called Mears. 85% of their properties are in socially deprived areas, and those areas are now kicking back, because in amongst those areas you have pensioners and so forth that have bought their houses back in the 80s. I spoke to a couple of them that were having to be moved out by their grandchildren.
But we know that people are not happy with. I think first thing to say is that people are worried about their living standards. They think they've declined. And actually, strikingly, in a different part of the survey, we found that 4 in 10 people feel like they were worse off since the COVID pandemic. That was actually particularly pronounced amongst reform voters. But overall, people are very pessimistic about their personal finances and their cost of living. So I think that's a huge driver. We also know that people aren't happy with the government's handling of immigration. And actually, going back to that question about what's affecting people's living standards, which I think is a much better way of getting at how people are feeling about things like the economy, people perceive, including Labour voters, including a sizable chunk of Labour voters, that immigration has had a negative impact on their living standards. And I do think we're starting to see that filter through into pessimism about the country as a whole.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Who is he? What's he doing there?
They already know who you are, though.
Don't miss this special reunion. Eamon and Anne together again, only on GB News Breakfast this weekend from 6 a.m.
And is that a gardening tan?
No, it's a cypress tan.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back to Martin Daubney on GB. Just for 4-year-old man, unfortunately, was not yesterday. The incident took place last night outside a casino in Knightsbridge, a very posh area, including the watch theory, which just yet now is the former Met Police detective Peter Blexley. Peter, good afternoon. You had a proper time of day instead of my show for once. Really sad news, actually. This guy dying last night, a 24-year-old. I think he's a father of 1 or 2, out enjoying his night in London, and he knifed to death.
Yes, and unfortunately, here in lawless Britain or Wild West London, whatever you want to call it, I've spent a lot of time in the media urging people, and it really gripes me to have to say this, but saying to them, if you've worked really hard, if you've become a success in life, and if you've bought yourself a treasured, expensive watch, please don't wear it when you come to London. Now, I accept the Met are not saying that is a conclusive theory yet, but it's getting a lot of airtime. And here we are, what we do know, a 24-year-old man in the prime of his life is now tragically lying on a cold, hard slab in a mortuary.
Yeah, so sad. And I understand, as I said, the guy's got children as well, a child growing up without his father or her father. It's funny, though, Peter, this seems to be, I mean, this concept of not wearing nice jewellery in London or taking a nice bag or a watch out or even driving a nice car is widely accepted now amongst people that I know. I mean, I was going for dinner in London last night and I said to a friend, oh, should I wear one of my nice watches, which, you know, I've saved many years to buy? I put it on and then I said, actually, I'm going to London, so I'll probably get robbed. And I've got the text message to prove it. I tweeted it earlier. And then I hear this chilling news yesterday of this guy who was literally minutes down the road from me at the same time I was there.
There you are. There are many people denied the opportunity to use that bag or that watch which they've worked so hard for and which they really like. That, sadly, is the face of London in 2025. And this murder comes on the evening of the day when the Metropolitan Police, with yet another one of their PR exercises, tell us how much crime has come down. But, of course, we all know that no matter what reductions there have been of late, crime still remains stubbornly and outrageously high. And whilst the Met announced this summer initiative to get more officers back onto high streets, it begs the question, what were the last couple of generations of senior police officers doing in taking those officers away from high streets, away from any street, and putting them into cars when they're inaccessible and you just don't see them?
Yeah, well said. And can I ask you just briefly, Peter, do you think London is salvageable?
I think it would take...
As a return to greatness? Because I grew up, going to London, watching Arsenal play. I love the place. It was completely different from it is today. Do you think we can ever get back to something like that?
It's my home city, so I sincerely hope that we do. But it's going to take political will. It will take cash, and there's not a lot of that around, because the terminal decline that so many parts of the city are suffering from, I fear, will never recover. But we have to remain optimistic. Let's have a police force. Let's have strong leaders. Let's do this.
And do you... well said. Thank you for your optimism. Do you feel, finally, that what we see in London now, the rapid decline in London, can spread to other parts of the UK?
It already has. I travel the country widely, following my football team, for example, so I get to many...
QPR?
Yeah, I get to many cities around the country, and sadly, I see the decline in far too many places.
OK, well, let's keep that optimism and that hope, because I guess for now, Peter, that's all we've got. Peter Blake, thank you very much, former Met Police detective. Still to come on, Martin Daubney will be crossing live to Sir Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron imminently as they announce their migrant deal. But will it be nothing but a French farce? I'm Ben Leo, covering for Martin Daubney. Back in a tick.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Yes, it's time for your afternoon weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Tomorrow, similar to today. If anything, a little bit hotter. Many places will be sunny, a bit misty around some coast. Now, it's not been sunny everywhere today. Still quite a lot of cloud across the far north of Scotland. A little bit of showery rain here in places too. But it is tending to drift away to the north, staying a bit damp in Shetland perhaps. But most places becoming dry through the night. In and around the Irish Sea, around the coast here, could be a bit misty and murky. Some sea fog lapping on shore at times, but most places dry and clear through the night. Pretty warm night in the south, in particular in towns and cities. Temperatures holding up in the high teens. A grey start then for parts of southwest Scotland, the east coast of Northern Ireland. Still perhaps quite a bit of cloud early on across the Northern Isles and the Western Isles, but generally here it's going to be a brighter day tomorrow than today. Nothing too bright early on the east coast of Northern Ireland, the southwestern areas of Scotland, the Isle of Man, around the coast of North and West Wales. It might just be a little misty and murky, as it could be on parts of the east coast as well. But certainly any mist and low cloud inland will tend to melt away pretty sharply, and I'm hopeful that any of that mist and sea fog around the coast will also tend to shrink away to reveal generally sunny skies for most this Friday. Temperatures are going to be picking up widely over 30 degrees Celsius through the afternoon. Parts of the Midlands, East Wales in particular. Coasts will always be a bit cooler, but warmer for Scotland and Northern Ireland, and certainly across the Highlands, temperatures rising compared to today's values. Friday evening, a balmy summer's evening for most, and then a similar day on Saturday. A bit more in the way of mist and low cloud perhaps on some of these eastern coasts, but again tending to move away and melt away through the course of the day. So many places just fine and dry and sunny with light winds, and Saturday probably seeing the peak of the heat, maybe close to 30 Celsius in northern Scotland, 32 or 33 further south. Goodbye.
A positive outlook through the night will power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed Home Battery Storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, this is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. In Staffordshire, on the A50 eastbound, commuters should expect 15-minute delays, anticipated to clear by 7:18 p.m. Meanwhile, the M20 eastbound in Kent is experiencing lane closures due to a vehicle fire, causing significant congestion. On the M60 anti-clockwise, a collision has resulted in a lane closure, with expected delays continuing until 5:30 p.m. Leicestershire's M1 northbound is also facing 30-minute delays amid a multi-vehicle incident. Additionally, major disruptions are affecting cross-country and Great Northern train services at Cambridge. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Imagine having an extra £1,000 to spend each week for an entire year. £54,321 in tax-free cash could be yours. Cash to spend however you like. £54,321 in cash could be landing in your bank account this year. For another chance to win £54,321 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates, 5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5. You got me. You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show. It's not a bad brand. Yeah. Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight.
On the unpredictable.
What does she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
Join me, Nana Akwir, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Very good afternoon to you. It's 4 p.m. Welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News with me, Ben Leo, just for this afternoon, broadcasting live from the heart of London and all across the UK. France let hundreds cross the channel this morning, hours before the big migrant deal is announced. That's coming imminently. We're going to hear live from Sir Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron later this hour. But will the deal be nothing but a French farce?
France and the United Kingdom have a shared responsibility to address irregular migration with humanity, solidarity and firmness.
Elsewhere, sickness handouts are soon to outpay minimum wage jobs by thousands of pounds a year. Is this proof that work really doesn't pay? Tory leader Kemi Badenoch says the system must change.
People are receiving disability benefits for having tennis elbow. I know some may disagree with me, but I do not believe that 1 in 4 of us can be considered disabled.
A display featuring a dinghy with dummies wearing life jackets has been condemned as sickening and racist by some. It's set to be burnt on a loyalist bonfire in Northern Ireland. So the big question is it pride or poison? Trouble's brewing for our boozers. Get your last orders in, please, because Britain's pubs are set to close by 1 a day as Labour's tax raids bite. Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for your company on Martin Daubney. Ben Leo here covering for the big man just for this afternoon. He's probably outside enjoying himself in a pub somewhere or the lovely weather we've got. Imminently, we're going to be going to this press conference between Sir Keir Starmer, Emmanuel Macron announcing this big migrant deal. Rumours have it, and if this is the case, it will be yet another insult to this country, I argue, that we will only be allowed to return 1 channel migrant to France in exchange for some 17 asylum seekers. So 17 in, 1 out. Does that sound like a good deal to you? Does that sound like an intent to sort this small boats crisis out? 44,000 people have now arrived in the UK since Labour took power in July last year. Smashing the gangs? Not working just yet, it seems. Big 2 hours coming up. First, though, let's get your news headlines with Sam Francis.
Ben, thank you, and good afternoon to you. 2 minutes past 4. The top story, well, the level of cooperation with France has never been stronger, Downing Street says, as Sir Keir Starmer is seeking to hammer out that migration deal with Emmanuel Macron. It's after the pair admitted a new deterrent was needed to stop small boats crossing the English Channel. The Prime Minister says he hopes the French president will sign up to a so-called 1 in, 1 out deal. as they hold their Franco-British summit at number 10 today, the last day of Mr Macron's state visit to the UK. Under the new deal, up to 50 migrants could be returned to France every week. But some say it doesn't go far enough. It comes as more than 44,000 migrants have reached British shores illegally via small boats since last year's general election, including, so far this year, 20,600 people.
This summit will signal a step change in our partnership to deliver greater prosperity and security for working people, building on our new agreement with the EU, which of course you referenced last night. In uncertain times, we achieve more by strengthening our relationship with our allies. So that is what today is all about, working together on the priorities that we share as two nations. For us, it's about delivering the changes that the British people want to see. We all agree the situation in the Channel cannot go on as it is. So we're bringing new tactics into play and a new level of intent to tackle illegal migration.
Kemi Badenoch has called for health benefits to be restricted to people with the most serious conditions as she set out her plans for welfare. In a speech earlier this afternoon, the Tory leader warned of a ticking time bomb of welfare dependency as government forecasts suggest annual spending on health and disability benefits could reach £70 billion by 2030. Other projections suggest the figure could go as high as £100 billion. Ms Badenoch spoke a short while ago.
If we don't solve this problem, our economy will collapse. 1 million young people are currently not in education, employment or training. And we are on course to spend £1 in every £4 of income tax on sickness benefits alone. What began as a safety net for the most vulnerable has morphed into something completely different. The system is unsustainable, and this threatens all the good it was designed to do.
Health Secretary Wes Streeting has called for resident doctors to abandon their unreasonable rush to strike. It comes as new data shows the waiting list for routine hospital treatment in England has fallen for the second consecutive month to now its lowest in more than 2 years. But the number of patients facing the longest waits has increased, according to NHS figures. Mr Streeting is warning NHS recovery is fragile.
It's vital that the BMA does the right thing and pulls back from the strike action that they're threatening. It would lead to untold disruption to patients. It would lead to unfair pressures on other NHS staff, but it would also set back the NHS's recovery and all the progress that we're making together. So even at this late stage, I urge them to take them up, for them to take me up on my offer to meet with them to discuss how we rebuild the resident doctor profession at the same time as we rebuild the National Health Service.
The threat of physical attacks by Iran on people living here in the UK has increased significantly, according to a new report by Parliament's intelligence watchdog. Iran poses a wide-ranging, persistent and unpredictable threat to the UK, according to the Intelligence and Security Committee. It also said Iran's intelligence services were willing and able, often through third-party agents, to attempt assassinations within the UK, and kidnap from the UK. The report said there had been 15 murder or kidnap attempts against British citizens or UK-based individuals since the beginning of 2022. And 3 teenagers and a 20-year-old woman have been arrested as part of an investigation into cyber attacks targeting Marks & Spencer, the Co-op and Harrods. The National Crime Agency said the individuals were arrested early this morning on suspicion of blackmail, money laundering, offences linked to the Computer Misuse Act and participating in the activities of a organised crime group. The arrests included 4 people between the ages of 17 and 20. All 4 were arrested from their home addresses and remain in custody. Those are the latest headlines for now. Do stay with us for that press conference with Sir Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron later this hour. Now, though, it's over to Ben.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome back to Martin Daubney on GB News with me, Ben Leo, just for this afternoon. Thank you as well for all your comments on the emails and gbnews.com/your say. I am reading them all as they come in. Some are very funny, some I can't read out, others right on the nail, actually. One of you has said, IL, good afternoon. You said the self-serving globalists need slaves to work to keep their debt-based Ponzi system going. Whilst you work yourselves to death and live hand-to-mouth, the globalists live in pure luxury. Well, you said it, not me. Thank you very much for that. Appreciate it. Right, coming up imminently in the next 10-15 minutes, we hope, we're expecting Sir Keir Starmer and French President Emmanuel Macron to hold a joint press conference as they're expected to sign this long-awaited migrant returns deal. So under these plans, up to 50 migrants could be returned to France in any 1 week. That's, yes, 50 a week. But this is far dwarfed by the number arriving, of course. We've already seen 100 migrants cross the Channel today alone. But beyond the politics, Sir Keir Starmer does seem pretty pally with President Macron.
You, Mr. Prime Minister, dear Keir, my friend. Thank you for your words, Mr. Prime Minister, dear Keir. Mr. Prime Minister, you expressed how much important are our links.
Ah, isn't that cute? That's really nice. If only they had the same affection for British people and Britain's borders. But anyway, we move on. Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp joins me live down the line. Mr Philp, good afternoon. Thank you for your company. I saw your comments this afternoon about this potential migrant deal that's going to be announced. You said that the Tories had a deterrent ready to go. A year later, Sir Keir Starmer's realised he's made a massive mistake. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, Ben, good afternoon. So we had the Rwanda scheme ready to go last summer, which would have seen not just a few illegal immigrants returned upon arrival, but every single illegal immigrant crossing the Channel returned either to their country of origin or to Rwanda without any kind of judicial appeals, none of that nonsense. Now, Keir Starmer cancelled that just a few weeks, 2 or 3 weeks before it was due to start at the end of July last year, claiming that he would instead smash the gangs. Well, that's turned out to be a complete joke. Illegal immigrant numbers crossing the Channel have surged by over 40%. And in fact, this year so far, 2025, has been the worst year in history for illegal immigrants crossing the Channel, the worst year in history, and 44,000 illegal immigrants have crossed since Keir Starmer became Prime Minister. So that deterrent, I think, would have worked. It worked in Australia when they did it because if an illegal immigrant crosses into the UK and they know they're going to be immediately and without any messing around sent somewhere else like Rwanda, they're obviously not going to bother attempting the crossing in the first place. And when Australia did something very similar about 12 or 13 years ago, using a little island called Nauru, within a few months, the illegal immigration on boats into Australia stopped completely. And in fact, the numbers Australia had were, if anything, slightly higher than ours. So
and they stopped overnight, Mr Philp, as well. They stopped overnight. Right. Tony Abbott won election on it as well. Right. And, I mean, I argue, I'll get your thoughts on this, actually. Australia put them into very seaworthy lifeboat-style vessels, and if they hadn't already reached Australian shores, they turned them back. I mean, what's your take on that, and indeed the wider policy of the Conservative Party, should you get back into government on that? Yeah, well, Australia obviously has a lot more space between it and Indonesia than we do between us and France. So the at-sea tactics can't be applied directly, but the removals can. So our policy is every single illegal immigrant who makes it to UK shores gets immediately removed to some location elsewhere, Rwanda or anywhere else. It doesn't really matter, to be honest, but Rwanda's as good as anywhere. And that will have a deterrent effect. Now, Starmer cancelled it just before it was due to start. We even had to pass a law to get around all these court cases, but Starmer cancelled it. Now he said he had the cheek yesterday to
to say in his communique that suddenly he's realised a deterrent might be a good idea after all. He suddenly realised that a year later. But the deterrent he proposes with Emmanuel Macron, which they're probably going to announce, we think, in the next few minutes, we believe only entails sending 50 migrants a week back to France. Now, that's 2,600 a year. But as we just said, 44,000 have crossed in the last year. So only 1 in 17 will get sent back. So 6% get sent back, 94% can stay. Now, if you're an illegal immigrant in France and you get on a boat to come over here and you are 94% likely to be able to stay in the UK, that is no deterrent. It won't work at all. It's completely laughable. So what we believe they're about to announce is going to make no difference whatsoever. It's another smoke screen by Starmer, just like it's a gimmick, just like the whole smash the gangs thing. He just used that as a slogan to win the election. A total failure. This is precisely the same. It's another gimmick. Won't make any difference at all.
Mr. Philp,
is culpable for cancelling that Rwanda deal or plan just a few days before it was due to start last July.
I have to ask, look, you've been doing some great stuff with the delivery drivers, great content, slightly jealous, I should have done it myself. Same with Robert Jenrick as well, on the tube and so on. You've been doing some good work.
Let's do it. Next time we'll do it together. Give me a call.
Give me a shout. I'll be out there. I'll be on the front line. But the question begs, Mr. Philp, especially for Conservative voters and Conservative supporters, why weren't you turning the screw like this when you were in power? And also, why did Rishi Sunak call that election before Rwanda could really get off the ground? Was he scared that it wouldn't work? Why did he call the election when he did? He could have hung on until the autumn and Rwanda would have started. And if it was going to be such a success, as you say it would have been, he probably would have had a better chance of staying in government.
Well, I think you're right there. And, I mean, a lot of us have asked the question why Rishi called the election earlier than he needed to for a whole number of reasons. I think, frankly, I'm a bit mystified about why that timing was so early. I mean, it could have actually been held as late as January 2025. So I'm mystified by that decision, to be quite honest. It should have been. Now, you asked about the record in government. Now, in 2023, our last full year in office, we actually got the small boat numbers down by about 30%. They were going down because, for example, previously, one of the most numerous nationalities crossing were Albanians. We did a deal with Albania, just to send them straight back to Albania, and the numbers dropped. The Belgians started intercepting boats at sea in Belgian waters and returning them back to Belgium. Embarkations from Belgium dropped by about 90% as well. So we were getting the numbers down in 2023, and then we had Rwanda ready to go in July of last year, and Starmer cancelled it. So our plan was working, the numbers were coming down, Rwanda was ready to go, and then Starmer has completely cocked it up and let the numbers get out of control. And like I said a minute ago, this gimmick we're about to hear is going to make no difference whatsoever.
Do you think, I mean, I've caused a bit of a stir in recent days from a tweet I made, and also I said the same comments to Trevor Kavanagh, the former political editor of The Sun, who's with me now and will be back in a second. I suggested that France actually, you probably won't agree with, go as far as this, but I call them a hostile state. And I don't know why Emmanuel Macron is having a state visit when, quite frankly, they failed to protect our borders, to protect their borders, and also they've pillaged the British taxpayer in the process. People, hard-working Brits all across this country being forced to dig deep to pay for these people coming from goodness knows where. And my view on France isn't a favourable one at the moment. I just want to get your take on that.
Yeah, well, firstly, you're right to say this is costing us billions. We're spending something like £4 or £5 billion a year accommodating all these illegal immigrants in hotels, paying them money. It's absolutely disgraceful. And yeah, I do agree that France should be doing a lot more, like the Belgians. The Belgians are stopping a lot more people on land. They're intercepting at sea and carting the illegal immigrants back to the Belgian shoreline. And the embarkations have pretty much stopped from Belgium. So it can be done, and the French should be doing that.
So what's the issue, Mr. Are they lazy, or is it intentional? What's the problem with the French?
I honestly don't know why they're not doing it. And it would actually serve the French interest.
You must have a theory.
Well, honestly,
it's very hard. Secretary.
Look, I don't know. Look, all I know is this needs to be sorted out. And if the French won't sort it out, we need to. We can't just rely on the French like Keir Starmer is doing. We need to have our own deterrent where every single illegal immigrant that arrives in the UK gets immediately and without any kind of court process removed. That's entirely in our own hands, and we're not left pleading with President Macron, which is precisely what Keir Starmer is doing inside number 10 Downing Street.
What a state of affairs. Yeah, begging the French for help. Brilliant. Chris Philp, thank you very much. Shadow Home Secretary, really appreciate your company. We'll catch up soon. Thank you, Mr Philp. Right, stick with us on Martin Daubney. We're going to be going live to that press conference as soon as we have it between Sir Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron. The details of that migrant deal will be announced, and I'll be joined again by the former political editor of The Sun, the great Trevor Kavanagh. Back in a sec.
The 12th, a day to celebrate history, community and family here in Northern Ireland. Join me, Arlene Foster.
And me, Dougie Beattie, as we bring you live coverage of the July 12th celebrations.
Right across the United Kingdom. It's all happening here on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we are proud to stand for you, for the Britain you love, for the communities you live in. That's what makes us the fearless champions of Britain. Its voices and its values. Because we, at GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hello, welcome back to Martin Daubney with me, Ben Leo, just for this afternoon. Any moment now, we are expecting Sir Keir Starmer and French President Emmanuel Macron to hold a joint press conference as they announce that migrant returns deal, including all the detail, what the numbers be. Is it 17 in, 1 out? We'll find out imminently. But first, though, a very interesting story. A civil servant has reportedly resigned after being accused of running a bakery while off work from his government responsibilities. So the staffer is said to have avoided Whitehall, but somehow did find the time to start a private bakery business. I'm joined now by GB News national reporter Charlie Peters. Charlie, I mean, this is bizarre. Tell us the details.
Well, civil servants are permitted to have a second form of income or a business as long as they declare it and it's within the rules. For example, you can't have an overlapping conflict of interest in your personal business and your civil service role. However, in this case, we understand that this civil servant, now resigned, did not tell the Ministry of Housing, Communities or Local Government that they'd started this bakery. Now, our sources in the department told GB News that this civil servant hadn't been to work for a long time, up to around 8 months, citing various personal issues or other reasons for not being able to conduct any meaningful departmental work. However, in April, they registered as the sole director of a bakery business on Companies House. Their personal phone number is listed all over social media profiles for this bakery business, and indeed it's attached when you search for this bakery. So it's very clear, and according to our sources, that this person had been working and running this bakery, had been a significant person of control over it, while also not being able to work for some reason at the civil service. And a source with knowledge of the departmental process inside Whitehall told us that there are clear rules around absence and special leave, and that this situation could indicate a serious misuse of public money, a failure of internal oversight, and also pointed to the potential exploitation of the system, Ben, being caused by working from home practices, which they say has raised wider concerns about that as well. Now, in a statement, a Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government spokesperson told me that the protection of taxpayers' money is of the utmost importance, and where we find any instances of wrongdoing, we investigate thoroughly and take the necessary action. I pressed them on the possibility of that might be now an investigation into this situation to possibly regather any taxpayer money that might have been spent on this civil servant / baker. But a departmental source told me that they were keeping options under review. When I went to said civil servant / baker for comment and to ask them to respond to our questions, they did not push back.
Wow, shocking stuff. And as you said, it raises concerns about the fact that vast swathes of the civil service are allowed to work from home. I mean, I think there was reports some weeks ago or months ago that one department, I can't remember from the top of my head, was threatening to strike because they were being asked to come into the office for 2 days a week of their 5-day week. So that does raise some serious concerns. Do we know if this guy was getting paid from the government when he was off during that 8 months?
Well, that's the question that's been put to them. It's understood that when civil servants have a long period of leave, they still earn a living. They still are paid their salary while they're off for some personal reasons or health reasons, for example. But Ben, as you say, some people do work second jobs in the civil service. It is permitted if they seek permission, but in this case, it seems he just needed the dough.
Oh, very good. You've been waiting for that one, Charlie. Good job. Yeah, it's. I just can't believe as well that they're allowed to have second jobs.
You didn't know that?
And no. Any other career, moonlighting, isn't it? That's what they call it.
Well, I suppose we want some civil servants to have business experience. It's quite helpful in some areas, and
I'd rather they focus on the job, to be honest.
Yes, I think possibly lots of the audience might agree with that as well.
All right, Charlie Peters, thank you very much. GBNews national reporter. I'm joined now by former political editor of The Sun, Trevor Kavanagh. Trevor, welcome back. I don't want to poo-poo the government statement there about that bakery story, but what the top line was, what was it? It says, we treat taxpayer money with the utmost importance, was it? I mean, what do you make of that? Do you believe them?
Well, I think Whitehall is now shown to be the welfare state for its own employees.
Yeah.
You can have as much time as you like for all sorts of reasons and set up a business at the same time.
That's all right, isn't it? Wonder what he was baking. Anyway, should we move on to more serious matters, or a more serious matter, rather. The press conference is coming imminently between Sir Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron. This migrant deal is mooted to be something like, well, we heard from Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp, who said that he understands that it's going to be 17 migrants into Britain, 1 out. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that, look, the hallmark of this government, in my view, is deceit. They tell lies without compunction, and they deny the truth which is evident to the whole world. And I think that they are guilty of the modern version, or the political version, of gaslighting the nation. They are telling people and convincing people that they've got it wrong about almost everything, and that they've got it right. And, you know, Chris Philp actually spent an awful long time there not answering the questions you were putting to him about what he could or should do were he to be Home Secretary today. And I think I have a solution for this, a very cheap one. For a few £100, we could equip the entire French border force with Stanley knives. They've shown that they know what to do with them. They've proven at a stroke that they can stop these boats in shallow water without danger to the occupants of the boats, and almost overnight will bring it to a halt.
I had a similar idea. I mean, I've said it a few times. Some people have laughed at me. But it's, again, I think it's... Maybe I'm just talking through hubris, but I think it's quite simple. You... Maybe not even the French, you enlist the British military, the British police, and even British volunteers, who I'm sure there will be thousands and thousands of them, patrolling the beaches of Calais, Dunkirk, northern France with Stanley knives, and you do what the French were pictured doing this week, I argue for the cameras, and you just let the Brits deal with it. If the French don't want to help, let us go onto the beaches of northern France and knife those boats before they get into deep waters.
There are plenty of solutions. All you need to do is put up a deterrent. And what has happened in Denmark, for instance, where they have actually deported people who come into the country illegally, and they oblige people to learn the language, to qualify for work if they can, but to also be decent citizens. If they're going to stay, they have to prove they're going to be decent citizens. If we also did something about the El Dorado factor, the pull factor of this country's benefit system, I mean, one of the things that Kemi Badenoch said that struck me very vividly was that we're paying £1 billion a month in welfare payments to foreign claimants.
Yeah.
Now, part of that will be partly the people who are coming across on those boats, and others too. But if we cease to do that and made them earn their benefits before they acquire them, they'd stop. I mean, what Australia did, their immigration problem dried up instantly the moment it became difficult to achieve.
Yeah.
If you put hurdles up and make it less appealing, then the number of people coming across will dry up very rapidly.
I will give some, devil's advocate for the government to provide some balance. Their argument would be, if they were here, is that, I mean, a Downing Street spokesperson, for example, this afternoon has said Emmanuel Macron and Keir Starmer have agreed that tackling the threat of irregular migration, not illegal, irregular, and small boat crossings is a shared priority that requires shared solutions, not gimmicks, such as they accuse Nigel Farage of putting a gimmick this morning when he went out on the channel. They've set up their border command, and Yvette Cooper's been on the airwaves pledging to get the problem sorted. So, I mean, do you not take any solace from that?
Not at all. I mean, the point is, when you said that France is a hostile nation, it is, and the reason it's a hostile nation is because Macron is utterly hostile to Brexit. And that is the beginning and the end of the story. He will never give any concession that in any way helps this country. If he can sabotage us and get rid of migrants from his shores to these shores, he will back that. He will not give any ground on this whatsoever. And even what he is prepared to do, the 1 in or 15 out, whatever the figures are, the 17 that might go, that's peanuts anyway. But we then have to take other people who are in France, who are asylum seekers and may be approved as asylum seekers, to get them off the hands of the French, save illegal migrants reaching here.
Yeah. Tony Smith, the ex-Director General of Border Force, who was on the show, I think about 3 o'clock as far as I remember, he said in a Telegraph column a week or so ago that migrants should be required to pay back the cost of their housing if granted asylum. He said the bill, of course, is up to £5.4 billion a year, processing, accommodating and supporting asylum seekers. Is that a good idea, do you think? I mean, most people, including me, would just argue, I don't want them here in the first place.
Yes, I think both of those are true. It is a possible answer, but no one's going to implement that. But I do think that they should at least start paying back something towards the hospitality that they've been receiving while they're here. After all, they are getting extremely good treatment in five-star hotels. They are running their own regime, and in many cases, illegal working slave gangs for all the people who are the gang masters who shipped them across here in the first place. And they are beholden to those criminal gangs while they're in this country indefinitely. And that is a serious threat to security.
If you just tuned in to Martin Daubney, we are imminently, maybe in the next minute or two, going to cross live to Sir Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron, who are announcing the details, rather, of this migrant deal. We will be going to that as soon as they come on the stage. We're just waiting for them to pick up. I think that's going to happen now, actually. So if you hang tight, let's go live to the press conference and see what we can hear.
Don't worry. Thank you very much. Thank you very much and good afternoon. It's a real pleasure to be here with President Macron, a firm friend to me personally and a firm ally to the United Kingdom. We first met in the Elysee, I think about 2 years ago, before I came into office when I was leader of the opposition. And it was clear to me then that we had a shared sense of the dangerous times that we're living through and of our responsibility to step up and to lead. We also share the fundamental belief that we serve our people better, create better jobs and opportunities, make our nation stronger, fairer and more secure if we work together. And the state visit has been a celebration of this relationship, our unique bonds of history and of culture. And today, our task is to look forward, to deliver a step change in this partnership, to meet the challenges of this moment and get the results that people want to see. Starting first with tackling illegal migration. It is a global crisis, and it's a European crisis. But it is also very acutely a crisis for our two nations, a crisis of law, security, humanity, and fairness. We face a sprawling, multi-billion-pound enterprise run by organised criminal gangs, leading hundreds of people to their death in the Channel. So we're determined, together, to end this vile trade. There is no silver bullet here, but with a united effort, new tactics, and a new level of intent, we can finally turn the tables. So I'm pleased to announce our agreement today on a groundbreaking returns pilot. For the very first time, migrants arriving via small boat will be detained and returned to France in short order. In exchange for every return, a different individual will be allowed to come here via a safe route, controlled and legal, subject to strict security checks, and only open to those who have not tried to enter the UK illegally. This will show others trying to make the same journey that it will be in vain, and the jobs they've been promised in the UK will no longer exist because of the nationwide crackdown we're delivering on illegal working, which is on a completely unprecedented scale. The President and I have agreed that this pilot will be implemented in coming weeks. Now, I know some people will still ask, why should we take anyone in? So let me address that directly. We accept genuine asylum seekers because it is right that we offer a haven to those in most dire need. But there's also something else here, something more practical, which is that we simply cannot solve a challenge like stopping the boats by acting alone and telling our allies that we won't play ball. That is why today's agreement is so important, because we will solve this, like so many of our problems, by working together. Just look at the steps the French government is planning, subject to their ongoing maritime review, to allow their officers to intervene in shallow waters and prevent more boats from launching. That is a big step, and I want to thank the President for driving it through. So this is our plan together, hard-headed, aggressive action on all fronts to break the gang's business model, secure our borders, and show that by attempting to reach the UK by small boat will only end in failure, detention, and return. Second, we've also made real progress today on boosting jobs and growth, building on our new agreement with the EU. We're ambitious for what we can do together as G7 economies, close trading partners, and leaders in areas that will dominate in years to come. Together, our countries account for over half of European spending on research and technology. So we've gone further today, collaborating on satellite connectivity, bringing together our leading supercomputers to seize the opportunities created by AI and bringing down barriers to trade and investment in strategic sectors. Just this week, we've welcomed EDF's major investment in Sizewell C, which will create thousands of jobs, boost our energy security, and protect bill payers for years to come. Third, we've strengthened our work to stand together for European security and in support of Ukraine. Because I'm clear, the security of the British people starts in Ukraine. We have just co-chaired a meeting of the Coalition of the Willing, including representatives from the United States for the first time. we announced plans for a new multinational force, Ukraine, headquartered in Paris, so that we're ready to support a peace deal when it comes. But while Putin turns his back on peace, we are rallying more support for Ukraine right now to defend their people and force Putin to the table. Now, as Europe's only nuclear powers and as leaders in NATO, we play a vital role in preserving the peace and security on this continent. So today we've updated the historic Lancaster House Treaty to protect our people and our way of work. This is a major modernisation. We are overhauling the combined Joint Expeditionary Force to make it 5 times larger, 50,000 troops strong, able to act across every domain. But we're going further. This morning, we signed the Northwood Declaration, confirming for the first time that we are coordinating our independent nuclear deterrence. From today, our adversaries will know that any extreme threat to this continent would prompt a response from our 2 nations. There is no greater demonstration of the importance of this relationship. And while we stand together for our collective defence, we must also deliver a defence dividend for working people. So we've agreed a deeper industrial partnership today to bring our defence industries closer than ever before. We're not just talking about stepping up. On defence, jobs and growth, we're delivering it. Previous governments tried and failed to secure results like this. We can achieve them now because we've taken the time and the care to do the real work, the quiet, serious diplomacy, to build proper relationships which multiply our strength and the opportunities that we enjoy. So, Emmanuel, thank you so much for being here. We represent 2 fiercely proud and independent nations, but by working together, we are delivering for our people, and we're a force for good in a dangerous world. Thank you, Emmanuel, and over to you.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Premier ministre, cher Keir. Mesdames et Messieurs les ministres, généraux, Amiral, Mesdames les ambassadrices, Mesdames et Messieurs, je veux d'abord ici remercier Sa Majesté le Roi Charles III pour son invitation à effectuer cette visite d'État, la première d'un président français depuis 17 ans,
by a French president for 17 years, and for the outstanding welcome extended to my wife and my delegation. I'd also like to thank Prime Minister Starmer for the very fruitful discussions during the 37th Franco-British Summit today in Downing Street and a few moments ago in Northwood. Prime Minister Keir, as you just recalled in detail, many of the breakthroughs in which we've reached agreement, indeed defining for the coming years and decades. I'd just like to run through each of them. I recalled in Westminster on Tuesday, this state visit recalls the strength of our alliance at the strategic level and the reset around shared interests and common projects for our future. In terms of defence and security, France and the UK have in-depth cooperation with the 2 nuclear power states in Europe, 2 permanent members of the UN Security Council in Europe, the 2 armies that have the greatest capability and combat experience, and those that cover the high end of the spectrum, anti-submarine operations and sensitive enemy submarine hunting, as we saw earlier for the Joint Commander. Since the Lancaster House treaties in 2010, our cooperation focuses not just on equipment operations, but also on military nuclear programs. However, times have changed, and our partnership must change accordingly. Today, the question is not just a matter of having expeditions against terrorists in failed states, but to confront a major conflict in Europe involving sophisticated states over the next few years. And with that in mind, Europe must know that it can count on a strategic bullet with France and the UK. That's why we've taken the required measures outlined in the Northwood Declaration that you just referred to. On the nuclear front, we've taken three major decisions. The first concerns our doctrine. In 1995 at Chequers, we affirmed that we could see no situation in which the vital interests of one might be affected without affecting those of the others. Today, in a radically different context that we're facing in the spirit of the European dimension that I mentioned, we're going even further. We recognize that we can conceive of no situation of extreme threat in Europe that would not prompt a rapid response on our part, whatever the nature of that response. Second decision is that we're not ruling out the coordination of our respective deterrence postures, a message that our partners must hear, as well as our adversaries. Thirdly, is the decision to deepen further our cooperation in the deterrent spheres, be it for policy, capability or operations. And we've decided for that to set up a joint structure, the Nuclear Monitoring Group, tasked with leading this cooperation. Now, these fundamental decisions that we've taken today in the agreement signed, our two countries remain independent and sovereign, but we're giving ourselves the means, when necessary, to work together in keeping with the markedly more threatening environment that we now face. Operationally, we've decided to radically upscale the CJTF that we set up in 2010 is the basis of our defining contribution, moving this force from a brigade to an Army Corps level, including up to 50,000 men that can be deployed in a major capability, which would be a 5 times increase of France and the UK, capable of including other European partners to be made available to the alliance. Our partnership convers credibility, robustness to the NATO European pillar in operational terms, and also gives greater credibility to nuclear capability. In terms of capability, decided to existing cooperation on future cruise and anti-ship missiles and undertake work to deliver the future air-to-air missiles, the new surface-to-air defense missiles, and in conjunction with Germany, the very long range missiles for in-depth strikes. Lastly, we've endorsed heightened defense cooperation in the fields of AI, space, cyber, and also manipulation of information at a time when both our countries are facing many hybrid threats. You can see it's a full suite that we've decided upon in order to confront our major challenges, from the most massive to the most insidious. UK has a special position in Europe. Our threats know no institutional borders, neither does our solidarity. We can build on our obvious sources with the UK, notably with the European Intervention Initiative. What also unites us is our determination to support Ukraine. With the Prime Minister, we convened a coalition of willing President Zelensky in Rome, present for the Reconstruction Conference, together with Prime Minister Meloni. A show of unity demonstrated last February when we held the first meeting in Paris a few weeks after in your country, Prime Minister. We had a fear, which was to be alone and to have a transatlantic divergence, and we wanted to reaffirm a message of strong support to the Ukraine. This unity has allowed us to rally US senators who are gearing up to launch more sanctions, and the Special Envoy General Kellogg, a determination to act together to continue support to Ukraine short-term on vital capability, drones, missiles, but also anti drone capabilities, financing to secure a ceasefire. It's the purpose of additional sanctions taken, 18th sanctions package that we're going to finalize, and sanctions that the Americans are getting ready to take that have this deterrent function rather than a conviction in regard to Russia. And above all, we've been able to announce the finalization of military planning finalized. I'd like to thank Admiral Radekin and General Burka for their work and the coordination of all their counterparts. 30 countries have rallied, and around this partnership and this co-Franco-British leadership, planning allows us to plan for a day a ceasefire will be signed. We're allowed to secure that ceasefire at a time at sea, under sea, through a regeneration of Ukrainian forces, and if need be, also reassurance forces that we planned. An operations staff is planned in Paris. 200 planners are already involved. As you can see, the question was put to us a few weeks ago. Your coalition of the willing, is it something concrete? It's simple. It's not just something that is concrete. These are hundreds of military personnel already mobilized, an existing staff, and decisions and planning already done. We've agreed to strengthen our partnership against the Russian shadow fleet and against sanctions busting and reduced oil revenues from Russia. Beyond Ukraine, we have the same approach on the Middle East, to call upon a cessation of hostilities, a path to peace, and the war spiral following the Hamas terrorist attack on 7th of October 23. Together, we've called for a ceasefire in Gaza and the freeing of all hostages. It's paramount to end the plight of hostages in Gaza. And continuance of an endless war without strategic goal is a grave threat for the region and our collective security. And today, it's a locus of dehumanization that nothing can justify together. We know how vital it is to offer a political path. I believe in the future the two-state solution is a basis of a regional security architecture allowing Israel to live in peace and security with its neighbors. And I believe in the need to unite our voices in Paris, in London and elsewhere, to recognize the state of Palestine and initiate this political momentum, which is the only consistent with prospects for peace. Our summit endorsed our regained reset 9 years after Brexit. I support the efforts of the Prime Minister to restore trust and uphold the agreements reached with the EU, strengthen that through areas of common interest. And I welcome that we're able, 19th May last, to set out a pragmatic roadmap between the EU and the UK on energy, climate, defence, health, phytosanitary standards and youth mobility. Today we're rolling out this reset bilaterally. Firstly, in the economic sphere, our trade topping the pre-Brexit levels, where the third and fourth largest investors in each other's countries. 3,500 French companies in the UK remain the second largest foreign employer. Several cooperation agreements signed between universities, research centres in AI and quantum power. And we're strengthening and anchoring today our partnerships in two other key sectors. Civilian nuclear power, first and foremost. The EDF will deliver the 2 EPR nuclear reactors Sizewell C, investing to 12% in the equity of the project company. It's good for decarbonising the UK economy. It's good for its energy security, for jobs and for skills. It's also good for EDF, that's thereby developing the EPR technology As for the Sizewell site, that will benefit from series production stemming from the Hinkley Point reactors. Second economic area is that of space. UK government will take part in the capital increase of Eutelsat that will add to the increase that we announced on the 19th of June, bringing the total amount to 1.5 billion euros, allowing our UK partners to conserve on a par their equity stake in the company. We thereby support the strategic growth plan of Eutelsat, the development of its LEO constellation, and strengthening our European partnership in terms of space connectivity in these two areas, civilian, nuclear and space, two forward-looking sectors. This summit is leading to major progress culturally in its with 300,000 French based in the UK, 150,000 Britain and France. It's a key component of our relation. We announced yesterday the loan and exhibition of the British Museum from September 26, July 27 of the Bayeux Tapestry, the most symbolic work of our shared history. Conversely, Sutton Hoo artwork, other works of art of British heritage that will be exhibited in everything will be done to ensure the protection of these national treasures, and I even hope, in the face of attempts of destabilization by Larry the Cat, and our experts will ensure the conservation of these. But lastly, we've agreed to bolster our efforts jointly to fight against migrant traffickers in the Channel and to stem illegal immigration. As you mentioned at length, Prime Minister, it's a key challenge for both our countries. By the Sandhurst Agreement, we've implemented remarkable cooperation with substantial results, notably the near extinction of attempts by rail or road transport via the tunnel. Let's recall a few years ago, it was the subject of daily comments, and we managed to fully close off these routes, managed to prevent far better than previously the departure of small boat, but the human technical resources we're deploying never been so substantial. But we've noticed since January last an increase in illegal crossings with new route taxi boats, people smuggling, taking ever-increasing risks for these crossings, and with a greater risk for these people who are fleeing their country, and so we need to strengthen our checks. Today we have over 1,200 security and intervention forces. It's a problem on both sides of the Channel, in addition to the tension this situation generates in northern France, well on your coast. That's why we're going to increase our share of it on several fronts. Firstly, need to understand that since Brexit, and I'm saying all this quite honestly, I know it's not your case, Prime Minister, but many people in your country explained that Brexit would make it possible to fight more effectively against illegal immigration. But it's in fact since Brexit that UK has no migratory agreement with the EU. In fact, therefore, for candidates for the crossing, those alternative legal admission route, nor a readmission scheme after a crossing, it creates an incentive to make the crossing the precise opposite what the Brexit has promised. Today, thanks to the proposal of our Home Secretaries, an agreement in principle for this pilot project that will be a major deterrent on the business model of smugglers, and by opening a legal admission route for people who have family ties with the UK, on the other hand, by planning the readmission those who successfully cross according to the principle of one for one. The agreement was signed as soon as the legal verification procedure completed, including those of the EU necessary regarding an issue linked to an external border of the EU, so that it be implemented as swiftly as possible. Secondly, regarding the maritime intervention doctrine, which we're aimed at better sharing intelligence, better fight against smugglers' networks, and to cross the maritime scheme, including the dimensions pertaining to the fight against illegal immigration and search and rescue. We're going to step up our joint cooperation towards countries of origin and transit during the migratory routes, upstream fight against the networks to deter departures and act on returns. We're working on the beginnings of the route in departure countries by addressing the root of the problem. The UK task force launched at the 2023 summit is working fully. We had initial results with Iraq. We're continuing with other countries. Lastly, Prime Minister confirmed the full rallying support of his government to address the pull factors of illegals, notably as regards the fight against illegal work and irregular stay, and I thank him warmly for that. And our summit this morning allowed to cover all these initiatives. You'll have understood these are strong, new, in-depth decisions that we're taking to fight against these networks and this illegal immigration and ensure fully security in both our countries. That's what I wish to say, following up on the Prime Minister's words. I'd like to end, if I may, by expressing my full gratitude to you, Prime Minister, for this summit and the decisions, as you've said. It's renewed trust, several years after Brexit, trust between our governments, between our two nations and between the two of us. And I profoundly believe in the actions that we're implementing. The last few months showed that in terms of the coalition, though willing that we launched together and will show in all the issues that I've referred to. And ultimately, through these decisions and this summit, we're beginning to illustrate, to flesh out what His Majesty the King wanted to announce a few days ago, this entente amicale. We're giving it content and we're sketching out and drawing this future together. I firmly believe that that is the right formula. That's why we decided to adopt it and together move forward on this part of the entente amicale hand in hand. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. We've now got a number of questions from both the French media and the British media. I'm going to start with Robert Peston, ITV. Robert.
Hello, it's Robert Peston, ITV, as you said, Prime Minister. Prime Minister, can a pilot that will see relatively few expulsions each week really have any serious deterrent effect when there are about 800 a week on average currently crossing the Channel? Monsieur le Président, pourquoi est-ce que votre police ne fait pas plus pour empêcher les demandeurs d'asile de traverser la Manche? Après tout, vous avez reçu 700 millions de livres du gouvernement britannique. And then if I may, to both of you, I don't know if this is a lighter note or not.
Especially one question. We're on
well,
third one,
be very brief. I think it's not completely unfair to say that you are sort of members of the slightly beleaguered class of centrist leaders, and I wondered if you'd shared any survival tips with each other.
Robert, thank you very much for your question. Firstly, on the returns pilot, the first thing to appreciate is this is groundbreaking, because this is a scheme intended to break the model and to make it clear that if you cross in a small boat, then you'll end up where you started. And the purpose of that is a pilot to break the model, and therefore, obviously, the numbers, if successful, will ramp up, but it's a pilot to break the model. That is the whole point of it. It is groundbreaking, and it's no wonder that for years, British governments, previous governments, have been trying to secure a deal like this, a returns agreement like this, because all governments have realised just how important it is. And we've now been able to agree it, and we've agreed it because we have cooperated, collaborated through serious diplomacy to get an outcome which is best for both of our countries. And so I'm very pleased that we've been able to agree this here today. Manuel.
Merci beaucoup pour votre question.
Thank you very much for your question. First off, as I said, we're working effectively and we have agreements that are already solid. I wouldn't want there to be an idea that we're not doing our job, we're wasting UK money. Reminding, when you put £1, we put in €3. And so we're putting in a lot of money to defend the border, which is an exterior border of the EU. Secondly, we've cut off routes, the land route, the rail route, and sharply reduced that of these small boats we referred to simply. The smugglers are adapting, we must adapt our response. Next, as I recalled, we must above all adapt the response to Brexit. It's that we sold a lie to the British people, which is a problem with Europe. But by listing a legal value, the problem has become Brexit. And with your government, we're pragmatic, and for the first time for 9 years, we're providing a response to allow people who have TAs you want to take for your useful for your country, legally admitted without taking the slightest, to help this return with the principle of one for one. People you don't want have no return by doing. Therein lies the difficulty behind this pilot project. That's why we have all this work with the EU. We must get the Dublin Agreement to work. France isn't going to recover the people you don't want. We must implement the agreements with the first entry countries. Cannot France receive people to whom you don't give asylum? We must rejig our agreements. We need the cooperation of the Spaniards, the Greeks. They're helping us to secure that. So it's a good agreement. We're doing the job. We're getting results. We have to adapt. We'll leave nothing undone. And I'll repeat here what we managed to secure, for example, with Iraq these past few months jointly through our joint task forces of prime importance. At the end of the day, one third of the illegals who in the Schengen area are people who want to reach your countries. So the key to the answer is what we're doing at our joint border. But it's to successfully have preventive management with the departure and transit countries and managing to cut off and eliminate the reasons why they're crossing. Precisely what your government is doing on ID cards, the fight on illegal work. That's the reason why they don't want it for us, but for you. So we're working seriously, which brings me to your second question, that I deeply believe that our responsibility at this time is to always look at the facts, the science, the complexity of the world, to explain what we're doing and to explain that faced with that, we can have political disagreements with one another, but one must never cede to the temptation of populism, which is a denial of science or travesty of the facts. That's what sets us apart from the rest. And I think it's really a harder doctrine that we mustn't abandon. Secondly, it's the conviction that the response to our problems, increasing problems, require cooperation, a European approach, where the populists have often sold you a response which is through nationalist withdrawal, budgetary, immigration, legal, growth problems of the UK 9 years ago. Were they solved by Brexit? Answer no. They're being solved by a government that wants to recommit with its trusted partners in Europe. And that's the responsibility of governments such as ours. Lastly, I've never felt isolated, because I recall the day I was elected. It was a few months after Brexit, a few months after the first election of Trump's election. We saying it's over for all the progressives who have a complex vision of the world or who want to put the European flag on a podium. The 2017 result demonstrated the opposite, and like many European legals, to continue government by giving the truth to their peoples, the complexity of the world, by offering solutions that are forward-looking, by giving hope. Our societies will become totally inward-looking, which is not the solution to our problems or what will allow our youth to look forward with confidence. On the contrary, I'm very optimistic.
Robert, just on the third bit of your question, it is the mission of this government and my mission to re-engage and to re-establish our place on the global stage through cooperation, serious, a quiet diplomacy, to get results for the British public. And that's the way we've gone about our business, and that is exactly how we've come to the agreement we have today on the returns agreement. But can I just add to something Emmanuel said, because I think this is really important, because irregular migration is a serious problem across the world, across Europe. It is a common problem for all European countries. It is now on the agenda of practically all European meetings in a way it simply wouldn't have been years ago, but it requires a serious, pragmatic response. Not the politics, the performative politics of the easy answers. And it is very important that we are able to show collectively, the two of us as leaders of two great nations confronting this threat, that social democracy can prevail and provide the answers to these serious problems, because otherwise the easy answers get an airing. And it is of some significance, I think, that whilst we have been working hard to get the returns agreement, others have been simply taking pictures of the problem. And that is where the politics is. It's this, we have to show that pragmatic politics is the way to deliver the results which matter for both of our peoples. It is important to the UK and to France, but it is really important in this age that we show that social democracy has the answers to the threats that we face across Europe and across the world. Thank you, Robert. I'll go to Stefan, please, from The Times.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Stefan Boscher from The Times. Firstly, are you able to give a guarantee that this deal will not be caught up in the courts and will not become another Rwanda that never happens? And secondly, how will the 50 or the roughly 50 people a week who are sent back, how will they actually be chosen from the UK? I mean, there's 800. How are you going to choose just the 50? And Mr. President, how committed are you to making sure that this pilot scheme actually becomes a full-blown scheme and that the numbers dramatically increase? And just lastly, if I may, you said during your opening address that since January the numbers have dramatically risen, and they have. Whose fault is that, yours or the man standing next to you?
Stefan, firstly, in response to just the last bit of your question, we both have a responsibility together to solve this. And one of the problems, to my mind, in the past has been the finger-pointing, the blame game, the megaphone politics, which has achieved precisely nothing on this and many other issues, which is why we've never engaged in it. It is why the EU-UK reset was a success, because I said at the outset we're not going to engage in the politics of finger-pointing, blaming and going to the nearest microphone to disparage our partners. And it's exactly the same approach that I take with Emmanuel on this issue. It is both of our responsibilities. I'm not going to descend into this issue of the politics of the past, which really didn't work and didn't deliver for the United Kingdom and didn't deliver for France or the EU. On the question of the pilot itself, it will be operationalised in coming weeks, so that is a good thing. It is, of course, a pilot. It is there to prove the concept that if you come over by small boats, then you will be returned to France. Of course, being a pilot, it is very important that it works, and we need to make sure that it does work. And if it works, what it does is break the model, and that's the only way to stop this vile trade. And so that's why this is a real breakthrough moment today. As I say, many governments have tried to get this far and have failed to do so. In terms of those that will be returned, I'm not going to go into the details of that, because that has the potential to undermine how this will operate. But it is important that we see this for what it is, which is a real breakthrough in the way that we tackle the vile trade of people smuggling. Manuel.
No, I totally agree. No finger pointing, and we work closely together. And the only way to be efficient is to work together, because you should not underestimate the impact this situation has on the northern part of France. And I think it's very often underestimated in your domestic debates. But it's not a gift for Calais, Dunkirk, and a lot of cities in France to have all these illegal migrants. And even when you go to these migrants and offer them asylum in France and some solutions, they just refuse. They want to cross the channel. So we have no other options than working closely together. And this is not an easy situation for French people and all these cities. And I want to thank all the mayors and population on north of France for their contribution to this common work. Second, what is very important to understand is this is a collaborative, cooperative and comprehensive plan, working from the origin country, the increasing and the adaptation of our bilateral action, and the fight against precisely this illegal situation on your soil. And this is the efficiency on this new plan, and I'm totally committed to make it work, because this is clearly our willingness and our common interests. And this pilot project, I wanted to insist on one point. This is a deterrence effect. And beyond the figures you mentioned, the point and what we want to do is precisely to have this deterrence effect vis-à-vis all these smugglers and all the traffickers, in order to send a message that we are efficient and they have no more interest to try to play with the rules.
Thank you so much. I'll go now to Christelle, if I may, from France Television.
Président, la première question.
Thank you. First question to you, Mr. So you're considering a swift response to both countries in the event of an extreme threat to European security. What do you mean by extreme threat? And Ukraine would be part of the scope of intervention if a reassurance force put in place. Question for the Prime Minister now. What form might take coordination between the two countries, with what type of operations, and how would you decide between your commitment to the US and your commitment vis-à-vis France? Thanks. I'd like to just, thanks for your question. When we speak of a reassurance force, Ukraine, nothing to do with the doctrine we just referred to. There'd be no ambiguity with Ukraine. We have aid plan, weapons, capability, short-term training requirements. Secondly, the day the ceasefire is right, we put in place a plan, all the work done by our two defense chiefs, which is precisely to organize the coalition, the 30 partner countries, and to see in the sea to regenerate the Ukrainian army, how to be able to secure this. And then we have a reassurance force to send a strategic message. That's one thing. Beside that, totally different, we've decided to coordinate our nuclear doctrines in a very novel way. To my knowledge, there are no two countries that have this closeness on nuclear doctrine as of now. As I said, this in no way detracts the strategic ambiguity linked to our nuclear doctrine. I'd never answer your question. It's part of the deterrent component and the credibility therein. Next, because we've decided coordinate of strategic exchanges, operational capability partnerships, but both of us remain fully sovereign and independent in triggering and steering on nuclear capabilities. These are two separate issues, otherwise it would create confusion, harmful. They're two separate exercises, but we're explaining that we each have our own doctrine. The French doctrine is known. I reaffirmed it 3 years ago. But next to that, we're putting in place this coordination in no way detracts from our independence. This is fully distinct from what we're doing on Ukraine.
Thank you very much. Just on the nuclear agreement that we've reached today, it is truly historic. Now, I understand why there's a lot of focus and attention on the irregular migration agreement that we've reached today. That is in itself extremely important. But I would say the nuclear agreement that we've reached is equally important and significant and historic, because we are the two nuclear nations in Europe, and we've agreed to take an incredible step forward this morning in relation to how we coordinate our capabilities in support of Europe and in support of NATO. And that is a historic moment for both of our countries, a historic moment for Europe and for the world. And you ask about the US and Europe. I have no doubt in my mind that NATO has been the single most effective military alliance ever, and for decades has allowed us to live in peace. And it is our responsibility not just to look back and celebrate that fact, but to ensure as joint leaders that we take forward and make sure that that is there for many, many years to come. The way to do that as I've argued many times now, is for Europe to step up and do more. For Europe to do more in its own collective defence. Partly that's to do with financing, of course, and we had the agreement at NATO just 2.5 weeks ago, but it's more than that. It's about coordinating and cooperating. And Emmanuel and I have been talking deeply about this for some time now. How do our two countries show the leadership that is required? That is why we took the step we did with the coalition of the willing, to ensure that Europe could see that there were two countries prepared to step forward on this. We do the same in relation to nuclear. In support of that wider argument on defence across Europe. So, as I say, I absolutely understand, because it's such a huge challenge, why irregular migration is the focus very much of the outcome of this summit. But don't underestimate just how important the nuclear coordination and cooperation is as well, in terms of the history of the defence of Europe. Thank you. And I've got Thomas from RTL.
Bonjour, Monsieur le Premier Ministre. Bonjour, Monsieur le Président.
Good morning, Prime Minister. President, a few weeks ago, you said in the face of this new equation, new requirements, new efforts. Tomorrow, the Chad, at your request, will present the review of the threat. What type of effort will the French and Europeans have to undertake? Will some be mobilized in some sort of reserve force? And Prime Minister, President Macron called on a joint recognition of Palestine. What is your take on this recognition? Where are you at in your thinking? When both of you are you going to take that decision? Thanks.
Merci beaucoup. Vous avez...
Thank you. You're right to recall indeed that faced with the situation I had a few months ago, called the French people to this leap forward. The nature of the risk, this hasn't changed, both because we must continue to help Ukraine that's in the front line. The Russian threat is there, and because the Russian determination is also there too. And you have on the European soil, geographically it's the case, at the border of the EU, a few thousand kilometers barely from Paris, a power equipped with a nuclear capability, which today allocates 40% of its budget to a military effort and rapidly is building capabilities across all areas. And nothing indicates that it decided to stop to what it has set itself as triggering war. But Russia's never upheld its commitments from the outset. So yes, we must face this risk. It's not the only one, because next to the terrorist threat remains that we have forms of conflict that exist, because the maritime cyber space threat is there with other powers. The defense chief tomorrow will set out the nature of the risk to all efforts undertaken through the two military programs, that a novel effort for the French nation. We didn't wait. Fortunately, we started back in 2017 a strategic review and first military program that repaired, a second military program that will take this to the next level. But clearly, we must today revise our program and our strategy to review it in light of the change in the nature of the risk. And that's why General the Chad will set out his thoughts, and I'll address the armed forces from the Defense Ministry on Sunday evening before Bastille Day to announce some strategic decisions of investment for the future. On the question that is put of mobilization of our fellow citizens, we have decided over 3 decades ago, professional army, and then to conscription, and with a reserve army. And our currently military, we're reaching the novel levels that the general will recall tomorrow. It's something that is supporting our armed forces to mobilize capabilities and skills from civil society and revisit this Army Nation Pact that is so important. We're going to accelerate on that front. Another matter is that of national service, and at the start of the year I've asked for an effort from the defense chief. It's currently being finalized and it will be reviewed during the course of the summer, and at the end of the summer, early in the autumn, after the timeline set out at the beginning of the year, I'll come back to you to set out our decisions, which, of course, will form part of the budget programme that we'll adopt.
Thank you. Just following on from that, I just want to say a few more words about the Coalition of the Willing, because today we have signed off the mature plans. So we've been in the military planning stage for some months now, intensely amongst a number of countries working together. We have now finalised the plan, ready to be operationalised, and so that's a really important step forward, and I pay tribute to all the planners for having got that work done in that time. I'm absolutely convinced that the work needs to be done now and not after the event of a ceasefire. We've got the headquarters established and up and running in Paris, and there is a command structure in place, which is one of the most important things for any operation. And so that is significant, and I think also significant in the Coalition of the Willing that we had US senators and representation there today. On the separate question of recognition of Palestine, let me start by saying that the situation in Gaza is utterly intolerable, and we need a ceasefire. We need aid to go in at volume, at pace, in a way that simply isn't happening on the ground at the moment. And of course, we need the hostages to be released. They've been held for a very, very long time. And so we must get to that. It has been the long-standing policy of the Labour Party and of this government to recognise Palestine as part of the process. And that remains our position, not least because I do not think it's possible to have a lasting peace in the Middle East if we don't have a two-state solution. But the focus now has to be unrelentingly on getting the ceasefire that will allow the space for the politics to take over from the fighting and allow the space for the aid to get in and for the hostages to get out. And Emmanuel and I, as you can imagine, talk about this and many other issues to align our thinking and walk forward. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
There we go. The Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, and the French President, Emmanuel Macron, in central London. Handshakes all round, pats on the back. So much to pick through there. First of all, Emmanuel Macron, lots of you saying, why is he speaking French at a press conference when he can speak English very well indeed, as he did so towards the end of that conference. Anyway, Macron pretty much, digs at Nigel Farage, calling his actions on the channel gimmicks. Sir Keir Starmer asking why he's out taking pictures, God forbid, of the crisis and not doing anything about it. I mean, some would argue that he's not actually in government. And Emmanuel Macron saying that Brits were sold a lie with Brexit, and pretty much blaming the illegal migrant crisis on the fact that Brexit was carried out under deceit and lies. Let's get Paul Richards down the line now, the former Labour Special Advisor. Paul, again, as I say, so many to pick through there. Essentially, this is a one-in, one-out deal. We will send back one illegal channel migrant. They will send us as far as they're concerned, a legitimate asylum seeker. However, no detail on what the limit will be. Reports suggest just 50 a week, which, in the grand scheme of things, I mean, there's hundreds that have come across the channel today, Paul, won't really touch the sides, will it?
Yeah, it's a pilot scheme, Ben, and they were very clear to stress that. It's to see whether or not it works to break the model. And it's whether or not, if it works, then they'll roll it out more fully. But at the moment, yeah, the numbers are very small. There were three things in the press conference. The nuclear deal was the sort of the big defence one, but also this thing about trade and jobs, and they're pointing out that there's French investment in Sizewell C, creating some jobs in that part of the country as well. So it was quite, as you say, a lot to unpick. The reason Macron spoke French, by the way, is because it was a press conference for the French media as well. So he was playing to his home crowd as well as us.
Why can't the Prime Minister call it what it is, which is illegal migration? Why is Downing Street and indeed the Prime Minister just then now calling it irregular migration? Do they think we're thick or something?
No, I think they know full well what an incredibly important issue this is, which is why it's just dominated a major international summit. I mean, I think the government is taking it very, very seriously indeed, as this negotiation with the French president has shown. I also think he did say very importantly, and I've said this to you before, there isn't a silver bullet. You know, if there's one thing we could do, we'd do it. We saw the French police with their knives, were they, or machetes, whatever they were, chopping up the boats the other week. I mean, I think we need more of that as well as this deal today, plus all the other things to disrupt the gangs. You know, it's lots of different things you have to do all at once to try and stop this vile trade.
Yeah.
But today's announcement is another important step forward, and if it works, then they're going to make it, deal with a lot more people. A lot more people will be detained and returned, as the Prime Minister said today.
Great. Sounds good. Look forward to it. Paul Richards, thank you. Seeing you at the weekend, am I? Yeah, he's gone. I think he's on Benio tonight, Saturday night. Let's speak to Tim Montgomery, founder of Con Home. Tim, welcome along. You were sitting through that quite patiently, enjoying it, some might argue.
People should hear our off-the-tape conversation. It was more fun, perhaps.
Well, the hot mic probably would have ended our careers. I'm glad the mics are off. Look, where do you want to start? I mean, Macron, do you take any... I mean, it's a minor point, really. Do you take any grievance with the fact he's sitting there speaking in French and then having a dig at Brexit, saying that Brits were sold a lie?
You know, the thing about a state visit, Ben, is that it's supposed to be an honouring of Britain.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be the French president, the head of state, not the head of government, coming to our country and honouring everything we are. But this wasn't a state visit in the traditional terms. This was someone coming as a partisan and making partisan points. You don't come as the guest of the king and then insult half of the country. Half of the country voted for Brexit. I don't think Brexit has been particularly well executed, but nonetheless, it was what we voted for, and I think it was still the right decision. Coming over here and insulting what the British people wanted, that's not the sort of thing that a visiting guest of the king does. But I'm afraid President Macron has done that. And, yeah, it upsets me.
OK, we heard some detail of the so-called deal, if you want to call it a deal, one in, one out.
Yeah.
Sir Keir Starmer said, it's clear to me we have a shared sense of the dangerous times we're living through with France and our responsibility to deal with it. To me, that sounds like they're gaslighting the nation. If they were truly aware and intuitive of the danger that this causes or imposes the country, then I'd suggest they do something a lot more serious.
So I think last week, 2,500 illegal... Let's call them illegal as well. They're not irregular migrants. They're illegal migrants.
Why are they calling it irregular?
Because they're trying to soften us up. They're trying to pretend what we can see with our own eyes isn't true. There are 2,500 illegal migrants across the English Channel. They're talking about returning 50. It's a literal drop in the channel. It's not acceptable. And my understanding, Ben, I don't know what you've heard from your own sources, but my understanding was that up until a few days ago, the Home Office were expecting this to cover 200 people. Now, 200 people wasn't enough, but 200 is 4 times as many as 50. 50 really doesn't address, or to use your expression, it doesn't touch the sides. It's not enough.
And yet he's describing it as groundbreaking, as pioneering.
Well, of course he would. You know, he's playing a political game with us.
I mean, again, as I said, just ask Paul Richards there. I mean, do they think people watching this conference, do they think the British people are dim or stupid? I mean, what's the thinking here behind calling it groundbreaking and pioneering?
Well, people never give one-word answers, but you asked me the question, do they think we're thick? Yes.
Yeah. And what do you make of Sir Keir Starmer finding time there? He didn't mention him by name, but he said people out taking pictures of the problem, which, of course, is Nigel Farage. He's been on GBNews this morning, out in the Channel with Mark White, our Home and Security editor. He's been out since 2019, in fact, before this was even a thing, you know, in the media. What do you make of the fact he's taking a dig at Farage?
Well, look, I remember Nigel Farage a few years ago talking about this problem. Everyone dismissed his concerns. Let me say something that Nigel Farage probably can't say, and that I would like to say. And I hope what I'm about to say, Ben, is completely wrong. But one day, I worry that we might wake up to a terrorist incident in this country, a terrible terrorist outrage, and we will learn that the people who committed that outrage were people who crossed the Channel illegally. If we wake up to that news, I can tell you the kind of action that I want to see now against these Channel migrants, that will be the overwhelming demand of the British people. This isn't just about the cost of putting people up in hotels. It's not just the sense of our country being broken into. This is a national security issue, which Nigel Farage keeps raising in the House of Commons. Who is coming over the English Channel? Who is coming into our country? We don't know. The security services, I don't believe, are on top of this. So it is absolutely essential that not just today, not tomorrow, but yesterday, we're on top of this position. And I'm afraid we're not at the moment at all.
Well, look, I share your fears as well, and I hope you're wrong, and I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah.
It was only some months ago, and I can't go into too much detail, we can't discuss it too much, but the Iranians arrested on the way to the Israeli embassy were reportedly channel migrants. So leave that as you will.
Yeah.
Can I ask you, please, just moving on very slightly, so Jake Berry has defected to Reform UK from the Conservatives. Do you welcome him with open arms? Because there is some concern from Reform members, Reform supporters, that actually they don't want old, disgruntled Tories who were partly to blame, they'd argue, for what crisis we find ourselves in at the moment.
Yeah. Well, look, why Reform is flying so high, it's partly because of Nigel Farage's personality, but it's basically because they're an outsider party. Yeah. They're a party that wants to change Britain. So if you keep taking too many people who are perceived as recycled politicians, that's not good. The exception I would make on this case is Jake Berry is not your average politician. He's a very good campaigner. He's one of the Conservative Party's most accomplished campaigners. He's linked to Mark Fulbrook. Mark Fulbrook has been at the centre of most of the successful Tory election campaigns of the last 20 years. You're not just getting potentially Jake Berry, you're getting the core of the Tories' election operation. So generally, I agree. No more defections of insignificance would be my advice to Nigel Farage. This is not a defection of insignificance. This is something that the Conservative Party will be very regretting about, because this is part of the core of their election operation.
Yeah, and I've said to Zia Youssef before, I said, you know, even Tory members, I remember on X, Twitter, you know, it's an echo chamber at times, but defecting from the Tories to Reform, and then days after announcing they'd done so, I'm not going to name names, but they were then calling for the axing of Nigel Farage, and it's like, you know, don't bring that bickering and the argumentative behaviour and the juvenile playground antics from the Tories to Reform if you're a Reform supporter.
That's partly why I left the Tory party, Ben, so I don't want it in Reform as well.
Right, Tim Montgomery, thank you very much. Appreciate your patience going through the press conference and indeed your company today. Thank you very much. Right, still to come on Martin Daubney between now and 6 o'clock. We'll be hearing from Kemi Badenoch and her reaction to Keir Starmer's migrant deal.
Yes, it's time for your afternoon weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Tomorrow, similar to today. If anything, a little bit hotter. Many places will be sunny, a bit misty around some coast. Now, it's not been sunny everywhere today. Still quite a lot of cloud across the far north of Scotland. A little bit of showery rain here in places too. But it is tending to drift away to the north, staying a bit damp in Shetland perhaps. But most places becoming dry through the night. In and around the Irish Sea, around the coast here, could be a bit misty and murky. Some sea fog lapping on shore at times, but most places dry and clear through the night. Pretty warm night in the south, in particular in towns and cities. Temperatures holding up in the high teens. A grey start then for parts of southwest Scotland, the east coast of Northern Ireland. Still perhaps quite a bit of cloud early on across the Northern Isles and the Western Isles, but generally here it's going to be a brighter day tomorrow than today. Nothing too bright early on the east coast of Northern Ireland, the southwestern areas of Scotland, the Isle of Man, around the coast of North and West Wales. It might just be a little misty and murky, as it could be on parts of the east coast as well. But certainly any mist and low cloud inland will tend to melt away pretty sharply, and I'm hopeful that any of that mist and sea fog around the coast will also tend to shrink away to reveal generally sunny skies for most this Friday. Temperatures are going to be picking up more widely over 30 degrees Celsius through the afternoon. Parts of the Midlands, East Wales in particular. Coasts will always be a bit cooler, but warmer for Scotland and Northern Ireland, and certainly across the Highlands, temperatures rising compared to today's values. Friday evening, a balmy summer's evening for most, and then a similar day on Saturday. A bit more in the way of mist and low cloud perhaps on some of these eastern coasts, but again tending to move away and melt away through the course of the day. So many places just fine and dry and sunny with light winds, and Saturday probably seeing the peak of the heat, maybe close to 30 Celsius in northern Scotland, 32 or 33 further south. Goodbye.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The 12th, a day to celebrate history, community and family here in Northern Ireland. Join me, Arlene Foster.
And me, Dougie Beattie, as we bring you live coverage of the July 12th celebrations.
Right across the United Kingdom. It's all happening here on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back to Martin Daubney on GB News with me, Ben Leo, just for this afternoon. Right, let's move on, shall we? Because Northumbria Police have been criticised for allowing their police officers to be involved in pride parades. Joining us live now from Leeds Combined Courts is our reporter, Jack Carson. Jack, very good afternoon to you. What's this story about, please? Enlighten us.
Well, you might remember Lindsay Smith, who was that Newcastle United fan that was subject to a probe by the Premier League and also banned from attending matches due to gender-critical views. Well, she's brought a case to the High Court against the Chief Constable of Northumbria Police, Vanessa Jardine, for authorisation to allow officers to engage in activities as part of the Pride in the City event in 2024 in Newcastle, which was organised by the group Northern Pride. Now, as a claimant, she argues that that authorisation was unlawful because a Chief Constable should have concluded that to authorise that active participation was to authorise the association with a viewpoint and policy position which she says is contested, and which association would put officers in breach of the rules and standards that they have to abide by. So the different activities that the judge is going to rule around is around officers being part of a march and a static display stall which had the Progress Pride flag and insignia, and also a car as well. Now, they say that this is controversial because Northern Pride, they say, embraces contested viewpoints and makes contested policy demands, particularly around the likes of gender identity theory, and embraces that gender ideology. We also heard in court today how Northumbria Police has engaged in training ran by Northern Pride, including about gender identity and how the police should act. They say that the police involvement in things like Pride and those parades and marches, when they say, as a claimant, are political marches, that therefore makes the rules and standards that the police have to follow around the impartiality and the view of the public as to whether they can engage in discharge their duties impartially, that therefore is affected. Now, in terms of what the counsel on behalf of the Chief Constable has said in court today, John Paul Waite, he said today that impartiality is not a matter of sufficient substance or importance for this court to consider. Also talking around Northumbria Police attending multiple events in the community as part of their duties, including, of course, with religious organisations. But there was a lot of focus this afternoon as the counsel for the Chief Constable stood up around the context around homosexuality laws in this country, from when it was criminalisation to the laws that we have now. And their argument is saying that the Chief Constable must make a decision based on these ever-changing backgrounds, and that while there is no controversy around the suggestion that the members of that community should not be discriminated against, they argue, as a counsel on behalf of the Chief Constable, that there is no way in which the officers that might be part of that march cannot then engage with members of the public in an impartial and discharge their duties in an impartial way. Those arguments have been put forward to the High Court judge who listened to them today, Mr. Justice Linden. He's now gone away to rule on those, and we expect that ruling in the next couple of weeks.
All right, Jack Carson in Leeds, thank you very much. Yes, that will be an interesting ruling, won't it? I wonder what ramifications it will have for other police forces all across the country. Indeed, my own one, Sussex Police down in Brighton, who certainly love a pride parade. I just don't know why we need to know who police officers want to sleep with. I mean, do you care who your local copper wants to sleep with? gbnews.com/you'll say. I can probably guess the answer. Right, let's move on, shall we? Because it's been revealed that unemployed people on sickness benefits will soon receive £2,500 more a year than a minimum wage worker. Our political editor spoke with Tory leader Kemi Badenoch a bit earlier today.
Kevin Badenoch, thank you for joining us today on GB News. There has been a big boom in claimants of benefits. You made that point in your speech. Are people basically trying it on?
We need to live within our means. We are spending far too much on welfare. Got 28 million people supporting another 28 million. The rider is bigger than the horse. And the reason why it's gotten this bad is because some people are trying it on and others just need the encouragement to get back into work. That there are some people who are going out there working shifts, really sweating, you know, in a cost of living, very difficult cost of living situation. But they are also paying for others who've just decided not to work, not because they cannot, because they choose not to. That's not right. That's not fair.
You're blaming the people making the claims rather than the system which the Tories oversaw. That's why I asked a question about an apology. In the same way you've apologised on immigration, surely one's owed here as well.
But remember this, the problem we fixed was a different problem. There were loads of people out of work. You could make more on benefits than you could on working. That's why we brought in a benefit cap. We reduced the number of workless households. We sorted it out. But what we've seen is that because people can't get out of work benefits, they're moving to health and disability. It is a new problem that came in mostly because of COVID. We did not create COVID. During COVID, we had remote assessments. We've got to bring those assessments back in. So what we're saying is that had we won the last election, we would have had a plan. Here are some things that we can do. Labour can do these things now to get people back into work, remove these sick fluencers and the scammers who are teaching people how to exploit the system. If you get more people into work, we're going to have more taxes. We're going to have less pressure on social housing, and we don't need to bring in loads of foreigners from other countries. It will also help with immigration.
The real world cost of this, if you became Prime Minister, would you be able to tell people, sorry, you can't have the money you've been having for years, get back to work? That's quite a tough message.
It is a tough message, but the Conservative Party is the only party that's ready to deliver this message. Every other party is saying, let's have more benefits. We've now had 2 votes, or 2 days of votes in Parliament, where every other party, Reform, Greens, Labour, SNP, they're all voting for more benefits. We are the only party saying, hang on, enough, we've got to get people back into work.
Again, I'm so sorry to ask you about these David Jones to Jake Berry. Neither have been Tory party members for a bit, but they are senior figures in the past in the party. Why are they leaving your party? Are they're following the Pied Piper called Nigel Farage?
They're leaving because the Conservative Party is becoming more conservative. We don't want...
They say that's conservative, don't they?
Well, look at what I've done with the party. Yeah. I've changed our policy on net zero. Jake Berry was a big net zero fan. He doesn't like my net zero policy. I've said that we need to, net zero is impossible. So the people who want net zero are going to reform. I have said that we need to crack down on spending. Welfare budget is too high. Taxes are too high. If they want to go to the high tax, high welfare parties, then that means that the Conservative Party is becoming more conservative. And that is what I promised the members, that we need to be the authentic Conservative Party, not the party promising people whatever it is they want to hear with no plan to deliver it.
People are quick to judge on your time as leader. I keep reminding viewers that you haven't yet addressed a party conference as leader. That's how soon we are in your time as leader. But would you be willing to stand aside if it boosted your party in the polls?
I was elected by the members to deal with the issue of the party not being recognised as Conservative anymore. That's not going to happen overnight. They elected me to do this job. I'm going to do it, and I'm doing it the right way, not by throwing out lots of random policies and making announcements. I want to win back the public trust. That doesn't happen overnight. And so we're going to do this the right way by acknowledging the mistakes we made, by being honest with the public about the mess the country is in. Labour is making everything worse. In 4 years' time, imagine how bad things are going to be after this 1 year that they've done. They've only had a year in office. And when that time comes, people are going to want a serious party that has credible plans to fix the mess Labour has made.
And your message to any other Tories or former senior Tories who want to jump ship to reform, what would you say to them now?
We are the Conservative Party. We believe in personal responsibility. We don't believe the government should do everything. We don't believe that everyone should be on welfare and that we should have higher taxes. If you don't agree with that, then you are not a Conservative.
So no crisis in the Tory party, you're pushing on?
Yes.
And just very finally, Islamophobia. We've spoken to Dominic Grieve, who's running a government review of this definition of Islamophobia. He says to us that it won't be a blasphemy law by the back door. He's a former Tory, or might still be a Tory, I think. Do you believe him?
I have been very clear. We don't need a new definition of Islamophobia. You look at the grooming gangs issue, lots of people were afraid of being labelled as Islamophobic, and they didn't report what was going on, they didn't try to fix what was going on, and look at all of those young girls who paid the price. We had a definition on anti-Muslim hatred that allowed us to have equality under the law. You can't attack people because of their religion or what they look like. But no religion should be free from criticism in this country. I don't want to see any blasphemy laws. We don't have a Christianophobia law, so why do we need an Islamophobia definition? We all know what it is we need to do. Let's make sure we enforce the law as it is and not create new problems.
Kemi Badenoch, thank you for joining us today on GB News.
Thank you, Chris.
There we go, our political editor Christopher Hope speaking to Tory leader Kemi Badenoch there. Some interesting lines, which, I mean, watch it on YouTube on catch-up if you want to watch the full version. Miss Badenoch saying people like Sir Jake Berry are leaving the Conservative Party for reform because the Conservative Party is becoming more conservative. She took aim at Jake Berry, saying that he was a supporter of net zero, and asked by Chopper if she would stand aside if it meant a boost in the polls for the Tories. She said, look, change won't happen overnight. We're a serious party that has a credible plan. I'm not just going to dish out policies willy-nilly. Yeah, the full interview is on YouTube, so definitely go and find that. Right, lots more coming up on today's show. Last orders for the pub, it looks like it, because one boozer is set to shut every day this year. I will certainly not drink to that. Why, though, is the big question. Why are pubs under such pressure? Is it because of Labour's tax rises? Is it because of electricity bills? We'll discuss that very shortly. I'm Ben Leo, covering for Martin Daubney on GB News. Back in a sec.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is he? What's he doing there?
They already know who you are, though.
Don't miss this special reunion, Eamon and Anne together again, only on GB News Breakfast this weekend from 6 a.m.
And is that a gardening tan?
No, it's a cypress tan.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Now imagine this. You spend your entire life dreaming of public service. You work your way up to become the Director of Public Prosecutions. You then become a Member of Parliament, and just next to your constituency is a world-famous museum hosting
I'm imagining it, Tom.
waxworks of famous figures, and you think, you dream that one day you will be featured in this mausoleum, for want of a better word. You become Prime Minister, and you think, now, finally, my waxwork will be on display at the world-famous Madame Tussauds. And then they say no.
And then you find out that Theresa May has one.
Oh.
Yes, so Madame Tussauds, there's Theresa May. There she is in her suit.
Yeah,
she was always one for colourful outfits.
Theresa May has a waxwork there, so does Boris Johnson, of course. It's reasonable to expect the Prime Minister would have thought that he would join the likes of David Cameron, Theresa May and Boris Johnson with a waxwork.
Winston Churchill.
Yeah.
Winston Churchill has one. Harold Macmillan, apparently, was previously displayed. Tony Blair.
Of course.
Tony Blair, of course. But apparently, so Madame Tussauds can't be sure that he'll still be relevant in 5 years' time. That's the reason.
Is that why they've said it? No.
They can't be sure, so they don't want to put the money into it, presumably.
Wow.
I could imagine Keir Starmer commissioning his own.
And yet, Lord Salisbury had a waxwork, the Marquis of Salisbury. Harold Macmillan and David Lloyd George, of course. But the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland...
Think about this.
...does not have a waxwork because he's not relevant.
A spokesperson told the Metro, we have no current plans to make a figure of the British Prime Minister.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back to Martin Daubney on GB News with me, Ben Leo. Now, are British pubs in peril? Because more than one a day is set set to close across the country this year, and nearly 5,600 jobs will be lost as a result. Well, joining me now is the author of Historic Pub Crawls Through England. Sounds good. Thomas Vosper. Thomas, good afternoon.
Afternoon. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. First of all, let's talk about the demise of the Great British Pub. One a day is pretty chilling. I've met my wife in a pub. I know how important they are to social cohesion, to people's relationships, to feeling part of society. Why are they closing so quickly?
Well, we're at a pinch point right now where it has never been more expensive to run a pub. But also, as punters going into a pub, it's never been more expensive for us to go in there.
Yeah.
And those costs are being passed on to us at a time when there's a cost of living crisis.
What's the most expensive you've paid for a pint?
This is awful. It was £11.25.
Goodness me.
Which is
Where was
absolutely shocking. It was in Chelsea, as you can probably imagine. And I don't even think it was a full pint. It was one of those fancy Belgian ones that was about 11%.
I remember when I first started going to pubs, I was 16, 17, I drank Coke or lemonade, of course. I remember on Mondays they had Monday clubs at £1.50 pints of Foster's back in the day. So is it any surprise now if you're getting pints £5, £6, £7, £11 that people are choosing to go to the likes of Tesco, Sainsbury's, picking up a 24-pack for, I don't know, a tenner or whatever it is? Is it a surprise?
Well,
Not really.
It's certainly difficult, isn't it, from a competitive standpoint, that it's almost as cheap to buy a bottle of wine from a supermarket than it is to buy just one single pint. However, pubs are so much more than just a place to go and drink. They're often at the hearts of towns and cities across the country, whether that's the one single country pub or whether that is a selection of pubs around a tourist spot. They are so much more than a place to drink.
You'll know the best ones, Thomas, because you've penned how many books here on pub crawls?
So I've written 3 books.
Yeah.
I've written 2 books around London and 1 book around England.
So it's historic pub crawls across London and England. Your favourite pub?
My number 1 pub is in Covent Garden. It's called the Marquis. Green Day played there. If it's good enough for Green Day to play a pub that holds 50 people, that's good enough for me to say that's my favourite.
Love Green Day. And a call for the Great British public. What should they be doing to support their local pubs, apart from the obvious?
Well, it's go out and go into the pubs. Go and explore towns and cities. Go and explore the places that you want to see with your friends and your family and stop off on the pub along the way.
What does the government need to do as well?
Well, there's certainly been a change in business rates, and although we talked about a 1p reduction in duty on pubs, on pints, that doesn't really make a difference when pubs are such a major employer of young people and national insurance goes up. It's just so expensive to run a pub. I cannot blame landlords and landladies at all for the prices that they're charging at the pubs.
Yeah.
At the pumps,
It's such a shame. As I said, I've met my wife in the pub. It wasn't the best pub. It was a bit of a dive, actually, but it was my pub. And I knew the characters in there. It's now a block of flats, which, you know, is, I guess we need housing, but it's a bit boring, eh?
Well, hopefully the marriage is stronger.
Yep, getting there. Getting there. Putting me under pressure now, Thomas. Thomas Vosper, thank you very much. On standby is Michelle Dewberry with a big show, no doubt, on migration. Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron. Dubes, what's in store?
Hello, Ben. I've got to tell you, I could single-handedly keep many a pub afloat. They are one of my favourite places in the entire world. Anyway, look, keeping me company tonight, I've got Aaron Bastani and Matt Goodwin. Well, of course, we'll be looking at this one-in, one-out scheme when it comes to France. It's like some kind of weird student exchange scheme. Remember them back in the day when you were all at school? I want to get into that and also get this. A man has been stabbed to death after apparently fighting back against someone who tried to rob his watch. Broken Britain. What a mess. See you in 2.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers. Sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Very warm one today. Tomorrow, if anything, a little bit hotter and a bit sunnier for many too. Again, some coasts will be a little bit misty and murky. High pressure's been building in for the past couple of days. These weather fronts still flirting with the far north of Scotland. They've provided some thicker cloud here and a little bit of rain. Still a bit damp across Shetland through the course of the night, but most places will have a dry night with lengthy clear spells. We will see some mist and fog around Irish sea coast that could just drift inland over parts of northwest England, the east of Northern Ireland and southwest Scotland. A warm one, especially in towns and cities in the south. 17, 18, but quite comfortable across much of Scotland, where there will be more sunshine to come tomorrow. Certainly a sunnier day over the Highlands and the Western Isles compared to today. Just like today, much of the south will be fine and sunny. Just the threat of a little bit of mist and low cloud on some North Sea coasts. Certainly that's going to be a bit of an issue, I suspect, on the east coast of Northern Ireland, with mist and low cloud here, the Isle of Man, and around some of the coasts in southwest Scotland. Still some cloud over the Northern Isles and the Western Isles early on Saturday, but generally that is pulling away and the winds will be lighter, and we should see a bit more sunshine over the Highlands compared to today for sure. I'm hopeful that area of mist and fog in the Irish Sea will shrink away from the coasts, so we should see some lengthy sunny spells pretty much everywhere by Friday afternoon. It will be a hotter day, more widely over 30 Celsius across the heart of England and Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland, also seeing those temperatures ticking up by a few degrees. A balmy Friday evening, and then Saturday, well, a similar story. Bit more mist and low cloud possible in eastern areas. Again, though, I'm hopeful it won't stick to the coast. It should tend to melt away through the course of the morning to reveal plenty of sunshine. A hot one, if anything, the hottest day of this spell, 32, 33 across the south, and parts of northern Scotland may get close to 30 Celsius too.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good evening. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. The M8 is restricted eastbound between junctions 5 and 4 EA due to an incident. On the M4 westbound at junction 23 EA Magor, roadworks have closed the off-slip with diversions in place. In Staffordshire, congestion continues on the A50 eastbound between A518 Atoxeter North and Atoxeter East. Suffolk's A14 westbound faces delays between junction 58 Bucklesham and junction 57 Ipswich East. Brighton and Hove have a total closure on the A27 eastbound following a collision. And on the trains, major disruption is reported at Cambridge. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Imagine having an extra £1,000 to spend each week for an entire year. £54,321 in tax-free cash could be yours. Cash to spend however you like. £54,321 in cash could be landing in your bank account this year. For another chance to win £54,321 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our